Chapter 491, The Proud Crown Prince, 34. I've drained it already and Uncle Cho told me that the stone was really expensive. Sister, I don't think I should go on cultivating anymore. We can't afford it. Xiaoqi grew sadder as he spoke and he was almost in tears. He was ashamed of himself for costing his family so much. Looking at her younger brother, Feng Wu was amused. She then rubbed his head the way one would a puppy. It felt really nice to touch. She then said confidently, "It's just one top-grade spiritual stone. Don't worry. We can afford it." But sister, I used up one stone in a day. Top-grade spiritual stones were so expensive. Uncle Cho said that one top-grade stone can cost as much as 10 years' worth of expenses for a household of 3. I spent all that money in one day. Feng Xiaoqi was contrite. But you're making rapid progress at the same time. I've found a place that can provide us with limitless top-grade spiritual stones. Soon, we won't have to worry about spiritual stones anymore. Feng Wu reassured him. Feng Xiaoqi almost jumped up in excitement. Really? Sister, really? Feng Wu rubbed his head again. Of course. Have I ever lied to you? Feng Xiaoqi couldn't recall even one occasion where his sister hadn't told him the truth, and she always kept her promises. He beamed at that thought. Little Feng Wu, am I that easy to overlook? There was a wistful voice from a shaded corner. Feng Wu turned around and saw that it was Yu Minji. He wore a dark purple robe today, which gave him an unruly and haughty look. He actually looked the way a superior cultivator should look. Feng Wu was reminded that Yu Minji was incredibly capable himself. After all, he was as famous as Jun Linyuan. However, Yu Minji seemed to be rather silly around her, which made her constantly ignore his capabilities. Feng Wu frowned. What are you doing here? Gosh, little Feng Wu, how forgetful can you be? Yu Minji glared at her. What? Didn't you ask me to get that job for your uncle? I've been running back and forth the whole day to get it done. And not only didn't you offer me anything to drink, you asked me what I'm doing here. That's just not acceptable, Yu Minji protested in an aggrieved tone. Feng Wu was embarrassed. Exactly what am I to you? Yu Minji complained. Feng Wu said, well, I'm so sorry. So much happened today and I'm still trying to digest everything. Do forgive me. Right, the job. Feng Wu didn't find Yu Minji all that reliable and she hadn't placed much hope in his promise. However, it seemed that he had gotten it done when he had been out for a stroll. Yu Minji gloated at the mention of it. Sticking out his chest and lifting his chin, he said, of course. It was a piece of cake. He then took a note out of his chest pocket and waved it in Feng Wu's face. What is it? Feng Wu asked. What do you think? Show me. Feng Wu reached for the note, but Yu Minji raised his hand over his head. Beg me and I'll give it to you, said Yu Minji arrogantly. Feng Wu took a deep breath. What was wrong with these men? As if one Jun Linyuan wasn't enough, Yu Minji was saying that, too? Feng Wu cast a stern look at Yu Minji, then turned to leave. Chapter 492, The Proud Crown Prince, 35. Hey! Yu Minji took Feng Wu's arm right away. Where are you going? I'm not begging you. Feng Wu grunted. Fine, fine. Your Majesty, I'm begging you, okay? Please take this note, or my whole day's work will have been for nothing. Yu Minji stuffed the note into Feng Wu's hand. That amused Feng Wu and she tittered. Seeing that Feng Wu had cheered up, Yu Minji said grumpily, You're unbelievable. You asked for my help and you're giving me attitude? I have to be the only person who will put up with you. Feng Wu made a face at him. Seeing how happy the girl was, Yu Minji felt that all his efforts had been worthwhile. It really is a note for the transfer. Yu Minji, well done. Feng Wu gave Yu Minji's chest a fist bump. I didn't think you could do it. What? Yu Minji stared at Feng Wu, but he couldn't hide his smugness. When I want something, I make sure I get it. This note is nothing. I can even make your uncle the minister of the Ministry of Official Personnel if you want. Feng Wu was speechless. You do realize that the Ministry of Official Personnel has a minister now, right? Yu Minji casually said, it won't if I kill him. Feng Wu's mouth fell open. You're joking, right? You'll be the one to decide if I'm joking or not. Yu Minji moved closer and winked at Feng Wu. His amorous eyes twinkled. Feng Wu was speechless. While Feng Wu and Yu Minji were bickering, Feng Yanfeng, Feng Wu's uncle, was on his way back home, feeling utterly defeated. He could still recall the severe and indignant look on Sir Yan's face. Mr. Feng, I see that the Feng family has a brilliant daughter. I bet with her around, you'll have a very promising future. The position of the Assistant Minister of the Ministry of Official Personnel is filled. Please leave, tell Mr. Feng I'm not in when he comes back. Feng Yanfeng felt despair at Sir Yan's cold, merciless tone. To get that position, he had already offended the official in the Ministry of Rights. But now, the Ministry of Official Personnel had disqualified him for that post. He feared that he couldn't even go back to work as the Assistant Minister of the Ministry of Rights anymore. Feng Yanfeng harbored much bitter resentment against Feng Wu for that. It was all because of her. None of this would have happened if it hadn't been for her, and he would have become the Assistant Minister of the Ministry of Official Personnel by now. At that thought, Feng Yanfeng headed for Fallen Star Yard. Thump. 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 Feng Yanfeng banged on the door to the yard. Before Granny Zhao could answer the door, Feng Yanfeng kicked it, trying to force his way in. However, Feng Wu had learned a few things since the last time the door was broken twice in a row. She had set up a simple reactive force formation on the door. The force which rebounded on a person when they knocked on the door was equivalent to the power they exerted. Hence, when Feng Yanfeng kicked with all his strength, he flew back and hit the big pagoda tree behind him. Feng Wu had set up something on that tree as well, as the second part of the mechanism she had designed. Ah! Feng Yanfeng cried out in pain. Feng Wu had smeared a special potion on the trunk of that tree. Hitting it would cause one excruciating pain. With a wave of her hand, Feng Wu switched off the third part of the mechanism. She didn't want to show all her cards so early. Uncle? Feng Wu ran out of the yard and looked at Feng Yanfeng innocently. What are you doing here? And how did you run into a tree in broad daylight? Chapter 493, The Proud Crown Prince, 36. Feng Yanfeng didn't know how to explain the fact that he had smashed into the tree because he tried to kick the door open. It would sound ridiculous. Feng Wu. Feng Yanfeng switched to an authoritative tone. Do you have any idea of the consequences of what you did in the Yen manor? Sir Yen holds a lot of grudges against us now, and I'm going to lose my job. Do you know how hard it is to work as a government official nowadays? The entire Feng clan has been implicated because you wouldn't swallow your pride. Feng Yanfeng had already been drunk on his way back, or he wouldn't be so talkative. Cheeks flushed, he pointed at Feng Wu. You should never have come back. What were you thinking? Go pack your things and go back to Northern Border City now. What was happening in Fallen Star Yard soon got out. Flying Snow Building had been rebuilt and Lady Wang was instructing the servants to put things back in the building when she got the news. My lady! My lady! Great news! Ryu went up to Lady Wang in a hurry, sounding exhilarated. My lord went to Fallen Star Yard and he's telling Miss Feng Wu to pack her things and get out. Lady Wang couldn't bear the sound of Feng Wu's name, but her face lit up when she heard the report. Really? He really said that? Yes. Very loudly. We heard it ourselves, every word of it. Ryu nodded in excitement. That's great. Lady Wang tossed aside the things in her hands. Let's go have a look. Granny Gui followed Lady Wang out immediately. Feng Yiran and Feng Sang had gone back to Imperial College, but Feng Lu was at home. She was just as thrilled and went along with her mother. The idea of seeing Feng Lu getting kicked back to northern border city was so uplifting. Feng Lu was overwhelmed with excitement. She arrived at Fallen Star Yard to hear her dad ranting at Feng Wu. "Pack your stuff. Go back to northern border city. Don't come back ever again." Feng Lu rushed to her mother's side and whispered, "Mum, what's going on? Why is Dad so mad?" Instead of whispering back, Lady Wang raised her voice. "Your dad was implicated for what happened in the Yen Manor and he may lose his job in the Ministry of Rights. That position he was trying to get at the Ministry of Official Personnel was given to someone else. None of that would have happened if it wasn't for a certain person. All was well before they came back. If they still have any consideration left for the clan, they should pack up and leave the Imperial capital now." Lady Wang had at least pretended to be nice, but after Yu Minji took Flying Snow building apart, she couldn't be bothered anymore. Feng Wu gave Feng Yanfeng a half-smile. "Uncle, I see that you've forgotten our deal." "What deal?" "You mean that 100,000, Feng Yanfeng smirked. "Don't be so naive. The political world is so much more complicated than you think. That 100,000 taels of silver." Feng Wu took out that note and tossed it at him before he could finish his sentence. Feng Yanfeng's eyes lit up. He saw immediately that it was from one of the ministries, and the format indicated that it was a letter of appointment. He took another look and was dazed on the spot. Meanwhile, Feng Lu and Lady Wang were only getting started. "Feng Wu, who the hell do you think you are? Shut your mouth and get out of the Imperial capital now." Smack. Chapter 494, The Proud Crown Prince, 37. Smack. There was the crisp sound of a slap. The others thought at first that Feng Yanfeng had slapped Feng Wu, but Lady Wang pressed a hand to her cheek and stared at Feng Yanfeng in disbelief. You hit me?" She thought she had said all the things he wanted to hear. What was wrong with that? Lady Wang almost collapsed. For she had always flattered herself to be Feng Yanfeng's beloved wife, which was how she had always presented herself to others. However, he had just slapped her in front of everyone. She thought she was going to lose her mind. Feng Yanfeng liked Lady Wang well enough, but only when it didn't damage his interests. Not to mention that Lady Wang was from an influential family herself. The guy sat on the fence and was always after material gain. At the sight of that letter of appointment, Lady Wang was tossed aside. Feng Yanfeng glared at her. "You're just a woman. What do you know? Apologize to Xiao Wu now." Lady Wang's eyes widened in disbelief. Not only had she been slapped, she had to apologize to the girl. She wouldn't have it. Feng Wu darted a casual look at the letter in Feng Yanfeng's hands. "I can give it to you, I can also take it back." Feng Yanfeng had examined it already. The letter was genuine, from the paper, the format, the seal, everything. And it had bypassed Sir Yan. The order had come directly from His Majesty. What did that mean? When Sir Yan was outright against it, Feng Wu had still been able to get him an appointment from the Emperor. Whoever made this happen had to be very well connected. Feng Yanfeng broke into a cold sweat. He shuddered and wiped his sweat. He then glowered at Lady Wang. "What are you doing standing around? Apologize." Feng Yanfeng shoved Lady Wang. She had never seen such a fierce look in his eyes before. Frightened, Lady Wang stared at Feng Yanfeng with a blank face. Feng Lu was equally stunned. She watched in bewilderment and only came back to herself just then. Rushing to her father, she screamed, "Dad! What's wrong with you? Have you lost your mind? Why are you on Feng Wu's side now? She should be kicked out. She's such a dash, shut up." Feng Yanfeng broke into a cold sweat again. For he saw that Feng Wu was going to tear the letter in half. No! That was his appointment letter and his way into the Ministry of Official Personnel. Moreover, judging by the part he had read, holy shit. It wasn't a letter for the position of Assistant Minister. It was for the Minister of the Ministry of Official Personnel. Feng Wu had to have done it on purpose. Feng Yanfeng was obsessed with getting promoted and he would willingly trade his soul for a higher position. If he had still hesitated a little over the position of assistant minister, the idea of becoming a minister swept away all his hesitation. Feng Wu had taken that letter back. She wouldn't give it to Feng Yanfeng that easily. Moreover, it was like Feng Wu said, she was able to get him the letter, and she could destroy that opportunity just as easily. Feng Lu had no idea what was going on and was still screaming. I don't understand. Why? What's so incredible about this woman? Dad, why are you on her side? You said you were going to kick her out yourself. Why, Master Feng, you really are going to kick me out? Feng Wu put the letter into her chest pocket and clapped her hands. All right. I'll take my family back to where we came from. Chapter 495, The Proud Crown Prince, 38. Feng Yanfeng was exasperated. No, please don't. The last thing Feng Yanfeng wanted now was for Feng Wu to leave, for she knew someone that was influential enough to take away Sir Yan's job. Could it be young Lord Feng? No, even that young lord wasn't important enough to do that. Could it be His Royal Highness? Feng Yanfeng's eyes lit up. So, Feng Wu had really hooked up with the Crown Prince. He knew it. Feng Wu was so pretty that it would be such a waste if she didn't become the Crown Prince's concubine. Great. With Feng Wu in the Crown Prince's bed, the Feng clan's future looked very promising. Feng Yanfeng was over the moon. He rushed to Feng Wu's side and said in an obsequious voice, Xiao Wu, I was only joking. Don't take it too seriously. Ha. That was a drunk person talking. Men talk bullshit after a few cups. I'm sure you understand, right? Feng Yanfeng was indeed an experienced fence-sitter. Jumping ship came so naturally to him. A moment ago, he had been roaring at Feng Wu, but he was all kind and smiling now. Feng Wu wasn't going to cut him loose that easily. She stood there with her hands behind her back and raised her chin. Uncle, was Feng Lu drunk as well? And what about my aunt? Did your whole family just decide to pick on me as a team? Feng Lu was furious. Yes. That's exactly what we're doing. Bite me. Feng Yanfeng waved his hands. Xiao Wu, my dear Xiao Wu, that was just a big misunderstanding. How can you think so lowly of me? I was only joking. He was thinking about the position of Minister of the Ministry of Official Personnel. Getting that job meant that he would be in charge of the appointment or transfer of all officials in the empire. With so much power, how lucrative was that position? Seeing the greedy look in Feng Yanfeng's eyes, Feng Wu smirked inwardly. If she told Feng Yanfeng that he had to kill Feng Lu to get the job, she was sure that he would do it without hesitation. Feng Wu said a silent prayer for Feng Lu. Well, uncle, you might be joking, but Feng Lu and my aunt certainly don't look like it. Crossing her arms, Feng Wu darted a sidelong glance at Feng Yanfeng. Did he think he could get away with it by saying that it was a joke? The position of the Minister of the Ministry of Official Personnel was way more valuable than that. You lot, come here. Feng Yanfeng gave a wave of his hand. His guards rushed in at the command. Feng Lu has been bullying her sister, and what she did to Feng Wu in the Yen manor almost led to a serious blunder. Lash her 50 times for her abominable behavior. Feng Lu was dumbfounded. He was her own father. If he couldn't stand up for her, the least he could do was not harm her. Dad! Feng Lu cried out. Feng Yanfeng's guards took Feng Lu down as easily as handling a chicken. Do you need a bench? I'll get you one. Feng Xiaoqi quickly ran into the room and took out a bench. Do you need a whip as well? We have that, too. Feng Yanfeng was speechless. He was only putting up a show for Feng Wu, but now. At that thought, he couldn't help but throw a dirty look at Feng Xiaoqi. Feng Xiaoqi hid behind Feng Wu and said timidly, Uncle, you're so scary. On guard, Feng Wu narrowed her eyes. Feng Yanfeng waved his hands in a hurry and forced out a laugh. Xiaoqi, you're so easily scared. Now, go get that whip for your uncle. Sure, that was a job Feng Xiaoqi liked. He returned in no time with a black whip. Chapter 496, The Proud Crown Prince, 39. They had a few whips in the house, but the black one was the only one with barbs. Feng Yanfeng's face darkened when he saw the whip. Feng Lu's mouth fell open. Lady Wang thought she was going to pass out. My lord! Don't! Please don't do this! Lady Wang rushed to Feng Yanfeng and burst into tears. My lord, didn't you say that Feng Wu was to be blamed for everything that happened at the Yan Manor and that Lu Er only did what she did because Feng Wu was a bad influence? If you're really going to punish our daughter, you have to punish Feng Wu as well. Otherwise, I won't let you do this to our daughter. Punish Feng Wu as well. Feng Yanfeng smirked. He couldn't shower Feng Wu with enough compliments at the moment. Punish her? Was she joking? You lot, escort the lady back to her room. As for Feng Lu, she's not going anywhere until she gets those 50 lashes. No mercy. Do it now. Whip her as hard as you can. Lady Wang passed out from her fury. As for Feng Yanfeng's guards, the head of the clan had made the decision and they would follow his orders to the T. Hence, they spared no effort with the whipping. Ah! Ah! Feng Lu burst into tears. It wasn't just from the physical pain, but from her frustration and disappointment in her father as well. Xiao Wu, the letter. Feng Yanfeng eyed the letter in Feng Wu's hands eagerly. Since Feng Yanfeng was being rather cooperative, Feng Wu casually handed over the appointment letter. Feng Yanfeng unfolded it immediately. Reading the gilded words on the paper, which included Minister of the Ministry of Official Personnel, Feng Yanfeng was overwhelmed with excitement that he had hoped for the assistant minister post, but had gotten the minister position instead. That was completely unexpected. Holding the letter, Feng Yanfeng turned to leave. He couldn't hide the excitement on his face. His head was swimming. Feng Wu stopped him grumpily. Uncle, haven't you forgotten something? What? Feng Yanfeng couldn't think straight, all he knew was that he was thrilled. Feng Wu made a money-counting gesture with her fingers. Feng Yanfeng almost rolled his eyes. Seriously? That's what you're thinking about now? She was able to get him this job and she had hooked up with His Royal Highness. 100,000 shouldn't be a problem for her at all. Feng Wu smiled. Uncle, are you going to renege on your debt now? As a matter of fact, that was exactly what Feng Yanfeng was thinking. In his mind, Feng Wu's money was the Feng clan's money, which in turn was equivalent to his own money. Why bother transferring it? However, seeing that Feng Wu looked displeased, Feng Yanfeng said, Don't worry. I'll give you the money. Once I start this job, I'll have more money than you can imagine. After that, Feng Yanfeng left happily with the letter. Yu Minji came out to the yard and saw that Feng Wu was watching Feng Yanfeng leave with a wicked smile on her face. Aren't you worried that he won't keep his promise? Yu Minji asked. Feng Wu smiled. I'm counting on it. She then asked Yu Minji, I asked for an assistant minister position, why did you make it a minister? The heads of the 6 ministries were such important positions that the appointment of these officials should be carefully evaluated. What was His Majesty thinking? Yu Minji gave her an enigmatic smile. But you didn't object to it, did you? What were you thinking? Those whom God wishes to destroy, He first makes mad, said Feng Wu indifferently. I thought the same thing. Yu Minji looked at Feng Wu affectionately. Feng Wu found his gaze a bit too intense. It's late. You should go back home. You ungrateful girl. After everything I've done for you, you're chasing me away without so much as offering me a glass of water, Yu Minji whined. Chapter 497, The Proud Crown Prince, 40. Feng Wu could put her uncle aside for the time being. After Yu Minji left, Feng Wu lay down on her bed and went over the current situation in her head. Her top priority now was to purchase Grand Secretary Feng's manor next door. Her family was in urgent need of spiritual stones for their cultivation, and Feng Wu wanted to make use of the spiritual stone lode underground and turn the Feng manor into a spiritual formation, which would help their cultivation greatly. The next thing on her list was to get into Imperial College. Only then would June Linyuan give her that broken star piece. Feng Wu was instantly motivated when she reminded herself that her beautiful master could wake up for a brief moment. As for little Phoenix, it had gone into hibernation after swallowing the abnormal flame bead and wouldn't wake up for a while. Feng Wu visited the dry well in the Feng manor in the middle of the night, where she asked Feng Tutu to get a few spiritual stones for the others to use in their cultivation. Top-grade spiritual stones? Sister, I didn't know we had them. Feng Xiaoqi was exhilarated. Of course we have them. Use as many as you want. Feng Wu was very free with other people's money. She gave 5 each to Feng Xiaoqi, Uncle Cho, and Qiuling. Uncle Cho was thrilled. Miss, I think I should stick with medium-grade spiritual stones. The top-grade ones are too valuable. Feng Wu stuffed the stones into Uncle Cho's hands. We have more than enough. Feel free to do whatever you want with them. The most important thing is to improve your cultivation levels. Uncle Cho was greatly touched. Even the masters of other families couldn't get their hands on top-grade spiritual stones, to say nothing of servants. Qiuling was even more flustered. Miss, I think low-grade spiritual stones are good enough for me. Qiuling was the only level 1 spiritual master here and she thought she would be wasting the high-quality stones. Just imagine how much gold they could trade these stones for. She couldn't bring herself to use them. Feng Wu shook her head. Spiritual stones filled the underground tunnels of the manor next door. There was an entire spiritual stone lode. Once she purchased that manor, it would be like a rocket for her and her family in their cultivation. Therefore, she had to have that lode, regardless of the cost. The following day. Shortly after daybreak, Sister. Feng Xiaoqi rushed into Feng Wu's room in excitement. Yes. Feng Wu was in the middle of getting dressed and she looked at her brother in bewilderment. Sister. Feng Xiaoqi's cheeks were flushed. I made it to level 4. I'm a level 4 spiritual master. Sister, do you hear me? Feng Xiaoqi was trembling with excitement. Level 4. Already? Didn't she just get him back the day before yesterday? Feng Wu examined him and saw that he was right. How did you do it? Even Feng Wu was curious. I don't know. Feng Xiaoqi was at a loss. Remember those 5 spiritual stones you gave me yesterday? Feng Wu nodded. Yup. I didn't want them to get stolen, so I put them under my pillow and slept on them. Feng Wu nodded. Yup. When I woke up this morning, I saw that all 5 stones were in tiny pieces. Feng Xiaoqi's eyes sparkled and his long eyelashes reminded one of 2 little fans. He said in an innocent tone, then, I realized that I had become a level 4 spiritual master. I don't know how I got there. Feng Wu was speechless. Sister, do you know why? Feng Xiaoqi asked innocently as he tugged on Feng Wu's sleeve. Feng Wu rubbed her forehead and took a deep breath. How unfair. Chapter 498, The Proud Crown Prince, 41. Sister. Feng Xiaoqi tugged on Feng Wu's sleeve. Feng Wu said. What? Why aren't you talking to me? Why did the spiritual stones break and why did I make a breakthrough? Why? The boy looked confused. Feng Wu said grumpily, Feng Xiaoqi, stop asking already. I'm feeling very defeated at the moment, so don't make it worse. Ha! Feng Xiaoqi scratched his head. Sister, Feng Wu chuckled. Sister, you're not mad. I was so scared. Feng Xiaoqi let out a breath of relief. Feng Wu rubbed his head. Xiaoqi, I kept you from cultivating for the past 5 years. And you followed my instructions without fail. You never tried to practice behind my back. It's time you earned your reward. Feng Wu would have cultivated in secret if she were him. But Xiaoqi was such an obedient boy. Feng Wu told him not to cultivate and he really hadn't for 5 years. He deserved to make such rapid progress. Just then, Xiao Wu, Xiao Wu. An excited voice came from outside. Chaoga? It was indeed her. Feng Wu turned around and saw Duan Chaoga rush into the yard. Xiao Wu, Chaoga was still chubby, but she looked a lot more proportionate already. I can finally see you. It's so hard to find you. I almost broke into a fight with them. Feng Wu smiled. Why are you here so early? After yesterday, how could I not come visit you? I would have come last night, but I was afraid they would think I was a thief. Chaoga beamed at Feng Wu. Wait, why are you reading these? A few books were scattered around on Feng Wu's desk. Chaoga flipped through them in passing and her eyes flickered. Why, aren't they the reading materials for Imperial College's literacy test? What do you need them for? Feng Wu raised an eyebrow. To take the exam, of course. But, Chaoga paused, then said hesitantly, but don't you have to be at least a level 9 spiritual master to get into Imperial College? And Feng Wu didn't have any cultivation ability, did she? She wasn't even qualified to apply. Feng Wu smiled. That won't be a problem. Ha! Chaoga was confused. Feng Wu gave a wave of her hand and a magpie on the roof nearby tumbled down. When it almost hit the ground, Feng Wu pinched her fingers together and the bird was suspended in midair. Chaoga was astonished. Turning around, she looked at Feng Wu in disbelief. Feng Wu grinned. Chaoga said, Xiao Wu, are you telling me that you actually can cultivate? Feng Wu's smile broadened. Ah, Chaoga's thrilled cry almost tore the roof off. Covering her mouth with both hands, Chaoga burst into tears. Oh God, Xiao Wu wasn't a good-for-nothing. She was awesome. She really was. Chaoga was dazed on the spot at the discovery. Her head went blank and she didn't know where to put her hands. It was more exciting than experiencing a breakthrough herself. Xiao Wu, you have your ability back, sob, you can cultivate. You're not useless. I knew it. Chaoga couldn't stop her tears and she almost passed out from crying. Feng Wu had no choice but to calm her down. Chapter 499, The Proud Crown Prince, 42. It was common knowledge that millions of candidates participated in Imperial College's entrance exam every year. The exam consisted of a written test and a physical tryout. The top 1,000 candidates of the written test would qualify to take part in the physical tryout, and the 100 students with the best scores in the latter would be admitted. Feng Wu darted a look at Chaoga. Chaoga, join me for the exam. Ha! Me? Chaoga found the suggestion unbelievable. But I can't, can I? I can take part in the written test, but to apply for the physical one, you have to be a level 9 spiritual master at least. I'm only a level 7 now. And she had only made a breakthrough because Feng Wu had pointed her in the right direction with that inky rain painting. Feng Wu rolled her eyes. The exam is 7 days away, isn't it? Xiao Wu, are you saying that I can go from level 7 to level 9 in 7 days? How is that even possible? Chaoga wouldn't believe it. Feng Wu smiled. Why not? As a matter of fact, I think it's doable. Do you think I'll be able to achieve that? Yes, Feng Wu said earnestly. All right. Chaoga smacked her hand on the table. If Xiao Wu says I can do it, I can do it. You're applying for Imperial College. Count me in. Feng Wu was doing it all for Chaoga's good. If the girl could get into Imperial College, she would no longer have to go back to her loveless family. If she wanted, she could come live with Feng Wu. Feng Wu made a mental note that after she bought the Feng Manor, she would invite Chaoga over to cultivate there as well. The girl would be thrilled at the speed of her progress. However, Chaoga wavered when she came back to reality. But Xiao Wu, we only have 7 days and we don't even know what the written exam looks like. What are we gonna do? What kind of questions do they usually have in the written test? Feng Wu asked casually. Chaoga felt like crying. Xiao Wu, from the way you put it, I thought you were ready for it, but in fact, you don't even know the type of questions in the written exam? Are you trying to scare me to death? Feng Wu shrugged. The idea of going to Imperial College never occurred to me before. When did you come up with the idea, then? Yesterday. Chaoga was rendered speechless. Feng Wu said, "Why are you giving me that look?" Taking Feng Wu's hand, Chaoga said sincerely, "Xiao Wu, how about we give up?" Why? Feng Wu was bewildered. Chaoga was very serious. Xiao Wu, people usually take at least 10 years to prepare for this entrance exam. Only after 10 years of studying and practicing is one qualified to sit the exam. And we're going to just walk in like this. The physical tryout aside, we'll probably hand in blank sheets for the written exam. That bad? Feng Wu frowned. Yes. Xiao Wu, have you read any of the past exam papers that got out? The questions are so profound. They cover everything from literature, history, art, and geography to theories on elements, formation, and even medicine, basically anything you can think of. How are we even going to begin to answer any of those without 10 years of preparation? There's also a discourse on politics, which can be anything. We probably won't be able to even understand the question. So, how about we drop it now? Can it be that difficult? Feng Wu frowned. Yes, it can. Xiao Wu, the maximum score for the written exam is 300, which takes up 30% of the total score. Without any preparation, we might as well give up on those 300 marks now, Chaoga said in resignation. Chapter 500, The Proud Crown Prince, 43. Can we get any sample papers? Feng Wu asked. Chaoga shook her head. Only the teachers of Imperial College have those. I heard that Grand Secretary Feng is one of the guest advisors at Imperial College and he played a big part in the design of the exam papers. He's been head of the exam board for the past few years. Feng Wu's eyes lit up. Grand Secretary Feng. Feng Wu didn't know many names in the Imperial capital, but Grand Secretary Feng. She had been meaning to get in touch with him in the last few days. She had her eye on Grand Secretary Feng's manner. Feng Wu asked, "Are you referring to Grand Secretary Feng, the one that's retiring soon?" Chaoga nodded. That's him. It's said that Grand Secretary Feng is from the south and he's planning to go back to his hometown after retirement. I heard that he has already resigned from all his government positions. Sigh. I wish we knew Grand Secretary Feng. That way, at least we could borrow some past papers from him. We're running around in the dark with our eyes closed at the moment. Feng Wu clapped her hands. Let's go to Grand Secretary Feng, then. In fact, Feng Wu was quite confident about the breadth and depth of her knowledge, but it would be safer to have access to some sample questions. Moreover, Chaoga needed such sample questions even more. And it just so happened that Grand Secretary Feng lived right next door to Feng Wu. It would be such a waste if she didn't take advantage of that. Chaoga didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Xiao Wu, what are you thinking? You do realize who Grand Secretary Feng is, right? He's like a national treasure. We can't just walk in and talk to him. Plus, we can't even get near him even if we know where he lives. I'll think of something. Feng Wu sat down and tapped the table with her fingers. She then looked up at Chaoga. Do you know who Grand Secretary Feng's close friends are? I have no idea. But I've heard that Grand Secretary Feng specializes in formations and he's as competent in that field as Grandmaster Wu. Maybe Grandmaster Wu is his good friend. Chaoga didn't sound very certain. Grandmaster Wu, as in Priest Wu. Wasn't he that Master Bian's teacher? An idea struck Feng Wu and she snapped her fingers. Priest Wu. Well, if he's the one, haha, I've left a hint for him already, said Feng Wu cheerfully. A hint? Chowga looked at Feng Wu in confusion. When? Yesterday in Elegant Ink Gallery. You were there as well. Feng Wu reminded her. Do you remember that Master Bien? Of course. What he said almost got us killed. Chowga flared up at the mention of that name and she clenched her fists angrily. That Master Bien certainly didn't impress her. Feng Wu said, I made that Master Bien purchase that whistling vase in the end. Right, Xiao Wu, you set him up in the end. Hahaha. That Master Bien's face almost turned green. Good job. He deserved that for working against us. Feng Wu said, but I didn't set him up. Ha! Chowga was confused. I gave him an opportunity, Feng Wu said cryptically. But it seems that he gave it away. What? Chowga was even more confused. She understood every word Xiao Wu said, but put them together into a sentence and she was at a loss. Feng Wu explained to her, if he had been clever enough, he should have shown up outside Fallen Star Yard and begged for my forgiveness. But he didn't. Ha! Chowga was dumbfounded. What was that about? English, please. Chapter 501, The Proud Crown Prince, 44. Seeing that she had successfully confused Chowga, Feng Wu chuckled. You don't have to understand everything. All you need to know now is that we can start from this Grandmaster Wu and work our way up to Grand Secretary Feng. Once they made Grand Secretary Feng's acquaintance, all would be easy. They could borrow as many past papers as they wanted. Moreover, Feng Wu was trying to purchase Grand Secretary Feng's manor and she had been looking for a chance to meet the old man, but she hadn't been able to find one until now. Feng Wu had thought about using Feng Sun as a go-between, but she then realized that Jun Linyuan didn't like her interacting with Feng Sun too often, although she had no idea why. Hence, she had to depend on herself now. But how are we supposed to get to know Grandmaster Wu? Will Master Bien recommend us to him? Chowga found that approach rather unreliable. That's right. Chowga smacked a hand on her thigh and cried out. I remember. You remember what? Feng Wu looked at her in bewilderment. Master Bien participated in the creation of Imperial College's essence-gathering formation, right? I just remembered that someone told me that his master was a guest advisor at Imperial College and a big shot in the formation department. Come to think of it, they were referring to Grandmaster Wu. Chowga sighed with emotion. Both Feng and Wu are valuable assets of the Empire, and I'd be over the moon if they were to somehow appreciate our capabilities. But they're such superior figures that I can't see how we're going to get ourselves noticed. Sigh. Feng Wu smiled. Not necessarily. Just then, Uncle Chiu came in and looked at Feng Wu in a strange way. Feng Wu was confused. Uncle Chiu, what's wrong? Do you have news for me? Uncle Chiu said awkwardly, Miss, didn't you tell me to ask around about where Grandmaster Wu lives? Feng Wu nodded. If I'm not mistaken, Priest Wu is coming this way. Uncle Chiu didn't know how to describe his feelings at that moment. Exactly how lucky could Miss Wu be? As soon as she wanted to find out where Grandmaster Wu lived, Grandmaster Wu was on her doorstep. That's a happy coincidence. Even Feng Wu was surprised and she rose to her feet involuntarily. Chowga's eyes widened. Uncle Chiu, are you talking about the Grandmaster Wu? The treasure of the Empire? Uncle Chiu nodded in a solemn manner. Yes. Master Bien was with him, so it has to be the guy. Are they coming here? Chowga cried out in surprise. No. If I've guessed right, they're going to the Feng Manor. Feng Wu looked pensive. Please don't tell her that Priest Wu had his eye on the Feng Manor as well. Xiao Wu, this is a great opportunity. What are we going to do? Chowga tugged at Feng Wu's sleeve in excitement. Talk about sheer luck. Priest Wu and Grand Secretary Feng were under the same roof now, and it would be such a waste if they didn't seize this opportunity. Rubbing her chin, Feng Wu walked back and forth in the room. Her head was spinning and several ideas came to her, but she ruled all of them out. All of a sudden. Feng Wu's eyes lit up. She knew what to do. At the same time. In the Feng Manor next door to the Feng Manor, Grand Secretary Feng stood in front of a window and was examining the whistling vase in an affectionate way. He had noticed the unusual characteristics of this whistling vase yesterday, which was why he had decided to buy it. However, after examining it closely last night, Grand Secretary Feng realized in surprise that Chapter 502, The Proud Crown Prince, 45. Grand Secretary Feng realized that although the vase itself was a fake antique, the formation within was very profound. Every time he listened to it, he had a different feeling. It was amazing. Grand Secretary Feng was a gaunt old man. He beckoned at someone behind him. Almost instantly, his old steward showed up. Find out who that young lady is. Be thorough about it. Yes. The steward left as quickly as he had shown up. How amazing, General Secretary Feng sighed with emotion. At such a young age, she could come up with such an intricate formation in such a short time. She's a genius. There's no doubt about it. Grand Secretary Feng had seen his fair share of the world and had met more than enough geniuses. However, none of those could compare with the whistling vase girl. What a spectacular girl. I wonder if I'll be able to see her again. Grand Secretary Feng regretted not taking her more seriously earlier. Grand Secretary Feng held some old grudges against Priest Wu from back in the day, and he had decided that he would use this opportunity to laugh at the latter outside the Feng Manor. Master Bien helped Priest Wu out of the carriage. Priest Wu was an old man with white hair and a goatee. Despite his age, he was hale and hearty and had a youthful look on his face. Just then, bang! A rock hit the carriage. Priest Wu dodged to the left and everyone looked up at the top of the wall. Feng Wu sat there with her legs dangling over the wall. Are you Priest Wu? Feng Wu only knew the man by name and had never met him in person before. Hence, she asked the question curiously. Feng Wu sat there against the light and the evening glow limned her figure. With the halo around her, she looked like a fairy. Priest Wu didn't linger on Feng Wu's face. He saw what Feng Wu was holding and frowned. That's too valuable a thing for someone this young to play with. How wasteful. The moral degeneration of the world is getting worse day by day. He walked off, shaking his head. Master Bien followed Priest Wu everywhere. Chang Yu, his senior martial brother, was the one who usually did the job. However, Chang Yu had been ill in the last few days, and the honorable task had landed on Master Bien's shoulders. It was such a rare opportunity that Master Bien spared no effort to make Priest Wu's life as comfortable as possible. Delighted, Priest Wu had decided to teach his student an advanced formation later. Master Bien had realized that as well and was feeling very smug. He recognized Feng Wu immediately. It's you. Master Bien frowned. Priest Wu darted a look at Master Bien and sounded displeased. You know her? Yes, Master, said Master Bien. She's the girl I told you about, the one who swindled me out of 1,000 top-grade spiritual stones. Master, do you not know her? Priest Wu frowned. Why should I know such a vain girl? That settled Master Bien's mind. This Miss Feng Wu had mentioned Priest Wu that day, which had flustered him quite a bit as he feared that she somehow knew his master. Master Bien smirked. It was a good thing he hadn't given his master that whistling vase as the girl had said to. As he helped Priest Wu into the Feng Manor, Master Bien darted a contemptuous look at Feng Wu. Chao Ge was upset. What did that old man mean? What vain girl? How could he say such things about Xiao Wu? Feng Wu only smiled. Chapter 503, The Proud Crown Prince, 46. Xiao Wu, why are you smiling? Seriously, you wear such simple and modest clothes. How did he come to that conclusion? That's a mean old man. Chao Ge said indignantly. Feng Wu only smiled at first, but she was so amused that she soon broke into laughter. Chao Ge stared at her in bewilderment. Why are you laughing? You were told off. Feng Wu chuckled. My beautiful master was right. Priest Wu is an upright man who hates it when people let formations go to waste. That man was Priest Wu, alright. Beautiful master. As in that beautiful master from your dreams? Chaoga was intrigued. But Feng Wu didn't want to talk about her beautiful master with Chaoga, for her master was her own secret and she didn't want to share it with anyone else. Feng Wu grunted proudly. I'm not going to talk about it. Chaoga said in resignation, what about Priest Wu, then? Where did you hear about what he's like? And whoever told you that sounds so superior? Feng Wu said stubbornly, I'm not telling you. Chaoga stared at Feng Wu. Every time you don't tell me something, it has to do with that beautiful master in your dreams. Feng Wu gloated. She then gave a wave of her hand. Let's go. Where to? The Feng Manor. Feng Wu grinned. That's where Priest Wu went and that's where we're going. Chaoga was dubious about that plan. Priest Wu was at Grand Secretary Feng's place as a guest, there was no way they would be invited in as well. She heard the conversation between Feng Wu and Steward Feng. The steward said, Miss, I'm sorry, but we're not accepting visitors today. Chaoga looked at Feng Wu. I told you. See? Feng Wu said matter-of-factly, isn't the manor for sale? We're not visitors, but buyers. Chaoga was speechless. She hadn't seen that coming. Why were they going to buy the manor? Xiao Wu was clever. Chaoga didn't worship the genius girl for nothing. Steward Feng hesitated. But we're entertaining an honorable guest today. I'm afraid you'll have to come back another day for the house tour. Feng Wu smiled. That won't be necessary. I think the manor looks great. Steward Feng thought to himself, of course you do. Everyone thinks this manor is great. He said with an impassive face, the manor is selling for 100,000 taels of silver. Alright. And a 1,000-year-old ginseng, a 5,000-year-old lingxi mushroom, and a 10,000-year-old Chinese knotweed as well. Alright. Moreover, you'll only qualify to purchase the manor if you can answer the question on this piece of paper in 3 days. Steward Feng handed Feng Wu a piece of paper. Feng Wu had seen him give Yi Yifei the same piece of paper when she had sat on the wall the other day. Feng Wu had planned to take a peek at Yi Yifei's paper when she followed the ladder to World Tower, but after everything that happened, she forgot all about it. Now, she finally knew what the question was. Seeing Feng Wu read the question on the spot, Steward Feng said grumpily, you have 3 days to think about it. There's no need to rush. Miss, you should leave now. He tried to shoo Feng Wu out the door after that. However, Feng Wu only gestured at Chaoga. Give me a pen, please. Chaoga had come prepared and she took out a ready-to-use writing brush from her chest pocket. Unlike a regular writing brush, which had to be dipped into ink to use, this one came with a soaked tip and could be used instantly. Whoosh! Feng Wu started writing right away. She gave the pen back to Chaoga a minute later and handed the paper back to Steward Feng. I don't need 3 days. I've solved the problem already. Mr. Feng, please give the answer to your master. Feng Wu clapped her hands. Steward Feng didn't check the answer, for he didn't understand it. Chapter 504, It Should Have Been Yours. But, the look he gave Feng Wu wasn't friendly at all. For he thought that Feng Wu was being disrespectful and that she had only written down some random nonsense. Quick, give it to your master. Chaoga prompted him. Although she had no idea what Feng Wu had in mind, Chaoga never questioned Feng Wu's decisions. Steward Feng frowned. Of all the potential house buyers he had met, this girl was the only one who treated the test so casually. All the others had been very serious. At that thought, the steward disliked Feng Wu even more. Hence, he waved Feng Wu off. I'll show it to my master later. Go back and wait for further instructions. Meanwhile, in the Feng Manor, Grand Secretary Feng and Priest Wu sat on their knees facing each other. Both kept their backs ramrod straight and had tranquil looks in their eyes. Between them was a bullywood tea table. On the table stood the porcelain whistling vase. Master Bien knelt next to Priest Wu, while a teenager stood at Grand Secretary Feng's side. The teenager had a refined and elegant air about him. With a glance, one could tell that he was from a noble family and that he was one of the eminent offspring. If Feng Wu were here, she would recognize him right away, for it was none other than Xian Yi himself. Xian Yi was very respectful toward Grand Secretary Feng, who was his maternal grandfather. Right now, Grand Secretary Feng wasn't paying attention to Xian Yi. He was staring at Priest Wu. Priest Wu, on the other hand, was completely absorbed in that whistling vase. He listened to it attentively and there was a serene look on his face. A while passed before Priest Wu slowly opened his eyes, which were limpid and sagacious. What a mind-calming formation. It reminds me of a warm spring day and makes me feel as if I'm strolling in a sea of flowers with a spring breeze brushing past my cheeks. It can cast all anger away and calm one's mind. This is definitely a master-level formation, and maybe even more advanced than that. More importantly, this mind-calming formation was perfect for Priest Wu, who was irascible and prone to agitation. Priest Wu had always been a step away from the supreme level because of his short temper. Grand Secretary Feng, is it possible for you to part with this treasure? Priest Wu asked. Master Bien blanched at those words. He had broken into a cold sweat as soon as he recognized the sagacious old man, and a chilly sensation ran down his spine when he heard how highly his master spoke of this whistling vase. As expected, Grand Secretary Feng glanced at Priest Wu. You like it? Brother Feng, you know me too well. I get grumpy so easily. If I have this whistling vase with the mind-calming formation in it, I might be able to rise to the supreme level. Despite his superior status, Priest Wu was still a junior to Grand Secretary Feng. He cupped his fists and smiled bitterly. Brother Feng, I apologize for offending you in the past. Please forgive me and sell me this whistling vase. Grand Secretary Feng smiled cryptically, but said nothing in reply. Brother Feng, how about this? You know my collection very well. May I trade one of my pieces for this vase? The formation in this vase wasn't exactly advanced, but the design was so intricate and sophisticated that it was worth studying. Moreover, it met Priest Wu's needs. And that wasn't something that could be measured with money alone. Grand Secretary Feng darted a glance at Master Bien, then casually said, This whistling vase should have been yours. What? Priest Wu was pleasantly surprised. Mine? How so? Why don't I know about it? Master Bien couldn't stop sweating. Chapter 505, Forgive Me. Master. Priest Wu found it unbelievable. That was impossible. This was his first time seeing this whistling vase. There was no way that he would have let other people have it if he had seen it first. Grand Secretary Feng didn't say anything, but only gave Master Bien a sidelong glance. Master Bien's mind went blank. Priest Wu also shifted his gaze to Master Bien. Master Bien drained of all color. Actually. Speak. Priest Wu bellowed, his eyes glinting coldly. He was short-tempered to begin with, and this only set him off. What have you been keeping from me? Speak. Well, said Master Bien. Actually, it was a young lady who sold off this whistling vase. And you were there? Priest Wu's face darkened a little. Yes, Master Bien nodded gingerly. You idiot. Priest Wu smacked Master Bien on the back of his head. Why didn't you buy the vase yourself? That was it. Grand Secretary Feng bought it before you could, right? More cold sweat trickled down Master Bien's forehead. Actually, Master Bien was almost in tears, but he had no choice but to tell the truth, for Grand Secretary Feng was right here. Word on the street was that Priest Wu had once set up Grand Secretary Feng, and the latter was probably doing this on purpose. Master, how about we talk about it after we get back? Master Bien suggested. However, Priest Wu smacked him on his head again. We're not going anywhere. Tell me what happened, now. Priest Wu was known for his short temper. Master Bien couldn't stall any longer and said disconsolately, "The young lady sold that vase to me at first." "What?" Priest Wu almost jumped to his feet. He stared at Master Bien. "What happened? Tell me everything. What do you mean she sold it to you at first?" Despite his reluctance, Master Bien had no choice but to tell Priest Wu everything that had taken place at Elegant Ink Gallery. Priest Wu said, "So, she was able to recognize a fake piece with one glance and effortlessly set up a formation as advanced as a mind-calming formation. How come I've never heard of such a talented person in the Imperial capital?" Seeing that Priest Wu's attention had shifted to the girl, Master Bien said in a hurry, "That's right. She was from the Imperial capital and she was so young. That was why I didn't recognize her work." Priest Wu glared at Master Bien. "If that girl sold you the vase, why didn't you bring it back to me?" "Well," Master Bien wiped the cold sweat off his forehead. "Because Grand Secretary Feng bought it from me." "Old Feng, you forced him to sell it to you, didn't you?" Priest Wu was very upset. That whistling vase should have been his. That girl with the unmatched talent had specifically said that it was for him. "I forced him." "Ha!" Grand Secretary Feng snorted. "There was no need for that. Your pupil here was so ignorant that he willingly sold the vase to me at the original price." "You!" Priest Wu was so furious that he wanted to beat Master Bien up. As a matter of fact, that was exactly what he did. Grabbing his walking stick, he struck Master Bien with it repeatedly. "You imbecile! You idiot! One day, you'll give me a heart attack. This whistling vase should have been mine. That girl asked you to bring it to me. How could you be so dumb?" Chapter 506, How Could You Do That? Priest Wu was so pissed, and the more he thought about it, the angrier he became. Master Bien ran around the room in circles to dodge the walking stick. Master, I'm so sorry. Please forgive me. You imbecile. I'm gonna kill you." Priest Wu was relentless with his strikes. What was worse, Grand Secretary Feng watched everything with a smile on his face. He would rub his chin every now and then. It was clear that he was enjoying this. The corner of Xian Yi's mouth twitched. His grandfather was so. Wasn't he supposed to be a valuable asset of the empire? How could he be this childish? It was said that as one got older, they became more and more like a child. That was so true. His grandfather still held a grudge over some petty conflict that had happened decades ago. For his revenge, General Secretary Feng had invited Priest Wu here to savor this whistling vase today just so that he could watch the latter beat up his pupil in vexation. It was such a childish thing to do. Xian Yi didn't know whether to laugh or cry. On the other side, Priest Wu, who was rather agile for his age, was still running after his pupil with the walking stick. "You idiot! Stop running! Do you have any idea how precious that whistling vase is? Do you know how wonderfully designed that formation is? A formation like that is so hard to come by. You idiot! You sold it just like that. She specifically mentioned my name, but you still sold it. Ah! I'm so pissed." Xian Yi watched in resignation. He then said to Grand Secretary Feng, "Grandpa, you're going to get Master Bien killed." Grand Secretary Feng said proudly, "He's a lousy person. He picked on that girl, and I'm only taking revenge for her. What's wrong with that?" He could make as many excuses as he wanted, but Xian Yi knew that the old man was doing it to get back at Priest Wu for that petty incident years and years ago. Xian Yi was speechless. He then turned to General Secretary Feng. "Grandpa, this girl you mentioned, is she really that good?" "Of course. If I hadn't seen her put the whistling vase back together with my own eyes, I would never have believed that a teenage girl could set up such a complicated formation in a split second." Seeing how highly Grand Secretary Feng spoke of the girl, Xian Yi was intrigued. "Who is this girl?" Grand Secretary Feng threw a dirty look at Xian Yi. You can't call her a girl just because I address her that way. You know what? She's about the same level as me in terms of her formation skills. That makes her equivalent to your grandaunt. Xian Yi almost choked on his tea. Him? Call a teenage girl grandaunt? He didn't know what to say, but that description only made him more curious. Grandpa, exactly who is she? He hadn't thought much of it, but after everything his grandfather said, he was very curious now. Grand Secretary Feng was a little vexed at that question. He hadn't expected to find such a profound formation in the vase, and only thought that it was more advanced than other ordinary ones. Hence, he hadn't asked his old steward to follow the girl. Sigh, Grand Secretary Feng heaved a sigh. I wish I knew who she is. But I have some leads, I'm sure I can find her. At the same time. Outside the manor. Feng Wu didn't leave after handing in the answer, and the two girls relaxed in the cool shade of a palm tree. The man in charge of the household affairs of the Feng Manor, aka Steward Feng, hadn't come back out. Chaoga asked Feng Wu, Xiao Wu, why hasn't that steward come out? It's been 15 minutes. Grand Secretary Feng should have seen the paper by now. Chapter 507, You? Feng Wu nodded. He should have, if everything went as planned. But judging by Steward Feng's attitude, I don't think he's shown it to his master yet. He said he was going to do it. How could he? Chaoga abhorred injustice like a deadly foe, and she bolted to her feet right away. I won't have it. I need to give him a reminder. Chaoga rushed to the guest hall to see Steward Feng standing in the shade with his head lowered and his hands at his sides. And that piece of paper had been crumpled into a ball and tossed on the ground. Chaoga was furious. Steward Feng. How could you? Chaoga cried out. She shouted at the top of her lungs and her voice resounded in the yard. Steward Feng had been dozing and he almost jumped at that voice. He blanched right away. Oh God, why was this girl still here? She would definitely disturb the respected guest inside. Steward Feng was so angry that he almost slapped Chaoga. You want to hit me? How dare you? Chaoga flared up and she pointed at Steward Feng. You vile man. Didn't you say you were going to hand the answer to your master? And what did you do? You tossed it on the ground. You threw Xiao Wu's effort away like a piece of garbage. Why did you do that? Chaoga went scarlet with rage. Steward Feng rushed to her side and covered her mouth. My dear young lady, I'm sorry, okay? It's all my fault. Please be quiet. My master is right there in the room. Those words set Chaoga off completely. The dauntless girl pushed Steward Feng away, put her hands on either side of her mouth like a loudspeaker, and yelled, Grand Secretary Feng. Grand Secretary Feng. Grand Secretary Feng. Help. The house is on fire. Feng Wu, who had just arrived, was rendered speechless. Steward Feng was so exasperated that he almost broke into tears. They were right outside the drawing room and a wall away from Grand Secretary Feng. The wall wasn't exactly soundproof. Grand Secretary Feng heard everything Chaoga said. He frowned. As an elderly official of the empire, the old man preferred gentle and quiet personalities. The noisy ones were his least favorite. Grand Secretary Feng darted a look at Xian Yi and the latter took the hint right away. Grandpa, I'll get rid of them. All right. Grand Secretary Feng nodded, still frowning. Xian Yi rose to his feet and quickly went outside. Chaoga was still yelling at the drawing room. Grand Secretary Feng. Grand Secretary Feng. Xiao Wu is an awesome girl. Please see her answer to the question. He pushed the door open when Chaoga was still yelling and he almost bumped into the girl. Wow, Chaoga stumbled back and stared at Xian Yi. This guy looked so familiar. Where had she seen him before? Before Chaoga could say another word, Xian Yi frowned and glanced at Steward Feng. That look sent chills down Steward Feng's spine. See them out. Seeing that Chowga wasn't anyone he knew, Xian Yi gave Steward Feng the order. That was the nature of Jun Linyuan and his friends. They were relentless toward those they deemed outsiders. They had no patience for those they found uninteresting and would get rid of those people immediately. However, Chowga cried out in surprise. Hey, I know you. What's your name again? Xian Yi, isn't it? Xian Yi darted a look at Chowga. Because of his connection to Jun Linyuan, Xian Yi was a well-known figure in the Imperial capital as well. Many knew him and he found it natural that this girl would know who he was, so Xian Yi didn't think much of it. Chapter 508, Very Solid. However, Chowga turned around and beckoned at Feng Wu. Xiao Wu. Come over here. Isn't he Xian the second? The boy that you used to beat up? He cried a lot. Isn't this him? Xiao Wu. Xian Yi's stomach lurched. Xian Yi. Feng Wu walked into the yard at that moment. Their eyes met. You? Why are you here? Xian Yi and Feng Wu exchanged looks and both saw surprise on each other's faces. Chowga grinned. Xiao Wu, that's him, right? That crybaby that you used to beat up? The one that would wait for you outside your house every day after that? Feng Wu chuckled. Xian Yi blushed suspiciously. He coughed into his fist. Just then, Master Bian couldn't take Priest Wu's blows anymore and rushed out, burying his head in his hands and crying for his master's mercy. He missed the threshold and tripped. Hence thump. Master Bian fell down on his face. Why were there so many people? He looked up and he saw a face that would give him nightmares. As a matter of face, it was a face of stunning beauty. You. Master Bian acted as if he had seen a ghost. His eyes opened so wide it was as if his eyeballs would fall out at any moment. However, he reacted quickly and rushed toward Feng Wu the next second. It's you. It's you. Both Feng Wu and Chowga jumped at his reaction and stumbled back involuntarily. Chowga shielded Feng Wu with her own body. What the hell? Don't go. Seeing them back off, especially Feng Wu, Master Bian ran after them in exasperation. You can't leave now. I won't let you. Stop right there. Chowga flared up. How dare a middle-aged loser try to lay his hands on Xiao Wu? He had to be delusional. Hence, Chowga grabbed the nearest flower pot. It was filled with soil and very solid. Bang! Chowga swung the pot and smashed it onto Master Bian's head. Crack! The pot shattered to pieces and the soil scattered all over the ground. Arg! Master Bien cried out and blood gushed from his forehead. Chowga didn't see that coming. She said hesitantly, "You were imprudent first. I did the right thing. You can't blame me." Master Bien. Imprudent? He wasn't trying to take advantage of Miss Feng. Everything happened so fast and everyone was taken by surprise. Seeing Master Bien's bloody forehead and Chowga's unforgiving attitude, Steward Feng was furious. "Young lady. Who do you think you are? Do you know who this is? Master Bien is a respected guest here. Take her." Fearing that he would be blamed for this, Steward Feng summoned some guards and was going to grab Chowga. His master would deal with her later. But, wait, Xian Yi frowned. Priest Wu was infuriated. Although he had been hitting Master Bien for the past few minutes, he only did it because the latter was his pupil. He could do whatever he wanted with his own pupil. But it was a different story when other people hurt his pupil. Hence, Priest Wu glared at Chowga and Feng Wu with a livid face. "Which one of you did this?" Priest Wu bellowed. "Confess now." Chapter 509, Who on earth is this girl? Intimidated by Priest Wu's tone, Chowga cringed. Feng Wu stepped out with a smile. "I did it." Priest Wu stared at Feng Wu and found her very familiar. He had seen that face before. Then it came to him. He had seen her before entering the Feng manor. The girl had a Grandmaster-level formation on her bracelet and Priest Wu had called her a vain girl. He hadn't expected to meet her again so soon. Master Bian rushed to his side and said to Priest Wu, Master. Master. Please don't blame her. It's her. Priest Wu nodded. It's you. Priest Wu had deemed Feng Wu an extravagant girl and he smirked. You're already this vain at such a young age. Shame on your family. Xian Yi frowned. He didn't like Priest Wu criticizing Feng Wu like that. However, before Xian Yi could intervene, Master Bian tugged at Priest Wu's sleeve and yelled, Master. It's her. The whistling vase girl. What? Priest Wu turned around and looked at Master Bian in confusion. I'm telling the truth, Master. This young lady made that whistling vase. I saw it with my own eyes. Priest Wu's eyes widened. He stared at Master Bian, then shifted his gaze to Feng Wu. It couldn't be. That was impossible. But she's so young, she was in her teens, right? 13, tops. Just then, footsteps came from inside. Grand Secretary Feng had come out. All the "it's her" talk intrigued Grand Secretary Feng greatly, so he came out to have a look. Why, young lady, it's you. Priest Wu turned to stare at Grand Secretary Feng. You know her, too? Grand Secretary Feng snapped, Of course I do. Back in Elegant Ink Gallery, this girl broke that whistling vase herself at first, then put it back together before breaking it again and sticking it together a second time. She also put in that mind-calming formation while she was at it. So many people saw it. I can't lie about that. Both Master Bian and Grand Secretary Feng were saying the same thing. Priest Wu had no choice but to believe them. He then turned to stare at the bracelet on Feng Wu's wrist, which had a formation embedded in it. He had reprimanded the girl for being vain because of that invaluable formation on her wrist. He believed that such a rare treasure should be put in a shrine and worshipped. However, if this girl really was the maker of the whistling vase, that was very embarrassing for him. Xian Yi looked at Grand Secretary Feng and Feng Wu in turn and narrowed his eyes. Grandpa, is she the girl you were talking about? Grand Secretary Feng nodded. That's right. She's the one. She's unbelievably talented in formations. Xian Yi's mouth fell open. To most people, Feng Wu was a crippled good-for-nothing, but according to his grandfather, Feng Wu was incredible. It sounds like you two know each other as well. Grand Secretary Feng found the coincidence interesting. We do. Xian Yi nodded. Not only did they know each other, they had come back to the Imperial capital from northern border city together. Which family is she from? Grand Secretary Feng asked curiously. Xian Yi gave him a wry smile and pointed at the house next door. Grand Secretary Feng looked at him in confusion. Xian Yi said, she lives right next door. The Feng clan. Grand Secretary Feng looked surprised. I didn't know they had such a talented daughter. That clan is so blessed. Priest Wu had been listening to their conversation and he interrupted them. Chapter 510, Be My Pupil. He rushed up to them. The Feng Manor? Wait, where have I heard that name before? That clan had an unmatched genius years ago, didn't they? I think her name was Feng Wu. Grand Secretary Feng nodded and said with regret, if that girl hadn't been crippled, she would have been accomplished by now, and the Feng clan would have risen with her. What a pity. Priest Wu sighed with emotion. I didn't expect to see such a talented member of the Feng clan again after Feng Wu. They must be so blessed by their ancestors. Grand Secretary Feng chimed in, I have to agree with you on that. Grandpa, Old Master Wu, Xian Yi didn't know whether to laugh or cry. This girl is the Feng Wu you're talking about. What? Grand Secretary Feng and Priest Wu cried out in surprise and both turned to look at Feng Wu. Both elderly men moved in unison and even their astonished faces looked identical. Feng Wu. That crippled girl? I thought she was dead. That's right. I was told she passed away as well. Xuan Yi said awkwardly, Grandpa, old Master Wu, she's standing right there. Stop calling her a dead person. Look at her livid face. Grand Secretary Feng said in amazement, Wait, she really is that girl? Wow. Priest Wu's eyes widened. If she's really Feng Wu, she's only like 14 now. No, 13. She's 13. Grand Secretary Feng corrected him immediately. 13 years old. Grand Secretary Feng and Priest Wu exchanged looks and both saw resignation in each other's eyes. What did they do when they were 13? They probably didn't know the first thing about formations. As for the girl here, her format and skills were already so solid at the age of 13. Imagine what she would become one day. Priest Wu hurried to Feng Wu's side in one stride. Kiddo, would you like to be my pupil? Feng Wu frowned. Grand Secretary Feng was glad to see her reaction. Excuse me? You're in my home now. Are you trying to steal my pupil away? He then ran up to her and pushed Priest Wu aside. Kiddo, pick me. I'll be your master. Priest Wu nearly fell down. He ran back to Feng Wu in a hurry, pushed Grand Secretary Feng away, and tugged at Feng Wu's sleeve. Kiddo, pick me. I'm the head of the formation department at Imperial College. I can make you a student of the department with a snap of my fingers. Grand Secretary Feng threw a dirty look at him. What's your problem? She's already more capable than any of your graduates. She doesn't need your lousy department. After mocking Priest Wu, Grand Secretary Feng turned to Feng Wu with the brightest smile. Miss Wu, I'm Grand Secretary Feng, and even the Emperor needs to address me as his teacher. Isn't that wonderful? Be my pupil and I'll get you all the best resources. By the way, you know him, right? Grand Secretary Feng was doing all he could to get this pupil. He dragged Xuan Yi over and presented the latter to Feng Wu. Priest Wu was all the more vexed. For Grand Secretary Feng had a very appealing-looking grandson, while he only had an unsightly pupil. However, while everyone thought that Grand Secretary Feng was trying to set up Xuan Yi and Feng Wu together, the whimsical old man said, Look, this guy is His Royal Highness's buddy. Don't all girls want to get close to His Royal Highness? Chapter 511, Who on earth is this girl? The look on Feng Wu's face changed at Grand Secretary Feng's words. However, Grand Secretary Feng was too occupied to notice it. He enjoined Xuan Yi, Xiao Yi, take Xiao Wu to see His Royal Highness when you have the time. Okay. Grand Secretary Feng was very pleased with himself. He was sure that any girl would jump at the opportunity to meet the Crown Prince. However, Feng Wu turned him down right away. Jun Linyuan. I don't want to see him. Jun Linyuan. The girl had just called the Crown Prince by his name. That was bold. But Grand Secretary Feng didn't believe a word Feng Wu said. The only girls that didn't like Jun Linyuan were the ones who weren't born yet. Priest Wu gave Feng Wu a pleading look. Kiddo, are you really not going to consider me? Xuan Yi was baffled. Grandmaster Wu, a valuable asset of the Empire and someone that even the Empire treated with great respect, looked so pitiful now that it seemed as if he was going to tug Feng Wu's sleeve and beg for her permission at any moment. The corner of Master Bian's mouth twitched. His master was so renowned that people lined up outside his door all the way to the city gates for a chance to become his pupil. Priest Wu couldn't be bothered to even spare them a glance. Master Bian never imagined that his master would one day look so piteous in front of a girl. However, instead of dropping to her knees and thanking Priest Wu for his consideration, Feng Wu only glanced at him. You want to be my master? Is there a problem? What can you possibly teach me? What do you want to learn? Priest Wu patted his chest and asked proudly. What do you have to offer? Formations. Priest Wu gloated. I'm the head of the formation department of Imperial College. So, can you create a supreme level formation as we speak? Feng Wu looked at him. Are you kidding me? Priest Wu almost jumped on the spot. No one can do that. All formations need to be carefully designed and set out with great care. You've got to be kidding me. However, Feng Wu only took that whistling vase from Grand Secretary Feng, concentrated, and started working on the formation. Priest Wu and Grand Secretary Feng stared at Feng Wu in amazement. Feng Wu's fingers flew over the vase as they emitted streaks of white light which flew into the whistling vase. She then handed the vase to Priest Wu. Priest Wu stared at Feng Wu in confusion. Feng Wu smiled. Check it out. Priest Wu examined the vase suspiciously, but Grand Secretary Feng, who wasn't holding the vase, looked convinced. Back in Elegant Ink Gallery previously, Feng Wu had done the same thing with her fingers and sent white light into the vase. After that, the formation was completed. The corner of Priest Wu's mouth twitched as he examined the vase, and he stiffened. Grand Secretary Feng nudged him. Hey, wake up. What do you see? Priest Wu turned to look at Grand Secretary Feng in amazement, then shifted his gaze to Feng Wu. His lips moved. With much difficulty, he said, You. Grand Secretary Feng was so intrigued that he snatched the vase from Priest Wu, then examined it closely. He raised his head abruptly and stared at Feng Wu. You, Grand Secretary Feng took a deep breath. Who on earth are you? Grand Secretary Feng thought that he had encountered enough people in his lifetime to be able to judge them correctly. However, Xuan Yi watched on the side blankly. Wasn't Feng Wu supposed to be a good-for-nothing? Why did his grandfather and old Master Wu look like they had seen a ghost? Chapter 512, Xuan Yi is baffled. While Xuan Yi was feeling baffled, Grand Secretary Feng and Priest Wu stared at Feng Wu as if they had seen a ghost. That was incredible. This girl was incredible. Priest Wu was a Grandmaster-level formation master and could create formations himself, but they required calculations and in-depth study. But just then Feng Wu was able to upgrade an intricate master-level formation to the Grandmaster level in a matter of minutes. How could one not be dumbstruck by such excellent skills? Do you still want to teach me formations? Feng Wu smiled at Priest Wu. Priest Wu gave Feng Wu a woeful look. Kiddo, are you kidding me? Forget about becoming my pupil. I want to be your pupil now. Xuan Yi's eyes widened and he stared at Feng Wu and Priest Wu in disbelief. Wasn't Feng Wu useless? Were her formations really that good? Feng Wu didn't notice the look on Xuan Yi's face. She only said proudly, I have a master already and he's the best in this land. I'm not going to be anyone else's pupil. Crossing her hands behind her back, the girl stuck out her chest proudly and looked so sure of herself that everyone else wanted to smack their own foreheads. Priest Wu and Grand Secretary Feng exchanged looks, then sighed in unison. She was right. With her skills, what other masters did she need? Although, Feng Wu smiled a little. I can only have one master, but if we're talking tutors, I can have as many as I want. So, would you like that? Tutors? Grand Secretary Feng and Priest Wu wouldn't have given the offer a second thought if it had come from anyone else. However, only an idiot wouldn't want a pupil like her. But, what can we teach you? The two old men thought about it and felt guilty. Priest Wu waved his hand. Forget about the tutor thing. You can be my master. And he wasn't joking. Grand Secretary Feng actually nodded in agreement. And Grand Secretary Feng was such a proud man. Xuan Yi, Master Bian, and Chaoga watched with open mouths. Especially Chaoga. It was only just now at Feng Wu's place that they had been trying to figure out a way to talk to Priest Wu, who would in turn lead them to Grand Secretary Feng. As it turned out, both old men wanted to become Feng Wu's pupils. Exactly how advanced were Feng Wu's formation skills? Feng Wu waved her hand with a smile. Please don't. You'll shame me to death like this. Well, how about we forget about masters and pupils and treat one another as peers? Grand Secretary Feng settled it. Priest Wu nodded. That's right. Your formation skills are more than enough for you to work as a guest advisor in the formation department. We're indeed peers in that sense. Xian Yi was dumbfounded. Feng Wu and the two old men were peers now. But what about him? Seeing the conflicted look on Xian Yi's face, Grand Secretary Feng smacked his grandson on the back of his head. You brat! What are you looking at? Give your greetings. What? Even someone as prim as Xian Yi was bewildered. Grand Secretary Feng snapped, you heard me. Didn't we agree that Xiao Wu is our peer now? I'm your grandfather and that makes her your grandaunt. Quickly, say hi to your grandaunt. Chapter 513, I'm applying to the martial arts department. Grand Secretary Feng and Priest Wu had acknowledged Feng Wu's abilities. Hence, they decided to treat her as their equal. Once she was acknowledged by the professionals, they instantly became much more approachable. Xian Yi was flustered by Grand Secretary Feng's prompting. Grandaunt? He was never going to call Feng Wu that. Grandpa, the corner of Xian Yi's mouth twitched a little. Only a couple of months earlier in northern border city, he had felt so superior over Feng Wu. But now, he was told to call her grandaunt. Feng Wu gave Xian Yi a half-smile. Xian Yi had always been a serious and prim guy, and she found it so amusing to see him like this. By the way, Xiao Wu, why are you here? General Secretary Feng led Feng Wu inside in an affable manner and completely forgot about Xian Yi. Rubbing his nose, Xian Yi followed the old man in silence. Feng Wu said, I heard that you're the honorary president of Imperial College. Grand Secretary Feng waved his hand. It's just a nominal thing, and I'm a deputy president. I'm the real head of the formation department. Xiao Wu, feel free to ask me anything, Priest Wu interjected in a hurry. Feng Wu smiled. I'm talking to the right people, then. I want to apply for Imperial College this year. What? Everyone was astonished. Grand Secretary Feng was shocked. Are you kidding me? Imperial College? Why do you even need to study in Imperial College? Priest Wu said, with what you can do with formations, Imperial College is way below your level. I can make you a guest advisor directly. Feng Wu shook her head. Priest Wu stared at Feng Wu, looking alarmed. Hey, kiddo, you're pushing it. I can make you a deputy president of the formation department at most. You can't have the president position. It's mine. Grand Secretary Feng glared at Priest Wu. Why can't she have it? I'm entitled to a vote. If it were up to me, I'd choose Xiao Wu over you any time. Old Feng, you're asking for a fight. Bring it on. The two elders looked way too old for a squabble like this, and the others watched in bafflement. It seemed, though, that this was how they usually interacted. However, Chaogo was still in shock. A guest advisor? The deputy president? She and Xiao Wu were only here to get to know these people so that they could borrow some past exam papers. Feng Wu looked at the two old men in resignation. I'm applying for the martial arts department. What? The quarreling pair stopped abruptly and turned their heads in unison. Feng Wu said earnestly, I want to get into the martial arts department. But you don't have any spiritual essence, do you? Xian Yi frowned at Feng Wu. How are you going to take the exam for the martial arts department? The martial arts department was the main department at Imperial College, while the departments of formation, medicine, and some others were minor ones. Although the formation and medicine departments were minor ones with fewer students, they weren't that much inferior in status. This was because there were many more practitioners of the martial arts, whereas awakening talent in formations or medicine was much more difficult than in martial arts. Less than 1 in 1,000 students had such talent, which made them much more precious. Grand Secretary Feng and Priest Wu gazed at Feng Wu as well. They had long realized that Feng Wu had no spiritual essence. Moreover, with what had happened back then, she was indeed a good-for-nothing when it came to cultivation. However, she was brilliant nonetheless. After her main path was cut off, she had somehow managed to blaze a trail of her own. But now, when she had almost reached the pinnacle after that trial, she was telling them that she was going back to that blocked main road? Chapter 514, Registration Closed. But why? Crossing his hands behind his back, Grand Secretary Feng looked at Feng Wu in bewilderment. Priest Wu also frowned. Kiddo, of course you may pass the written exam, but without any cultivation ability, how are you going to deal with the physical tryout? Must one have spiritual essence to pass the physical tryout? Feng Wu said lightly. How are you going to fight the others if you don't have it? Everyone was shocked by her reaction. I can still defeat them, with or without spiritual essence, Feng Wu said proudly. No, you can't. You need to be a level 9 spiritual master to apply to Imperial College, but you, Priest Wu shook his head. You aren't even a level 1 spiritual master. How are you even going to register? Without registering, she wouldn't qualify to take the exam. Both Priest Wu and Grand Secretary Feng smiled wryly and thought that the girl was dreaming. However, Feng Wu put her hands behind her back and grinned. If I remember correctly, Imperial College has a board of elders. If I have recommendations from 3 board members, they can make an exception and let me register for the exam. There is indeed such a rule, but it hasn't been used in years. Priest Wu gave her a wry smile. That's because any normal person would only try to take the exam after they become a level 9 spiritual master, or even after becoming a spiritual grandmaster. Otherwise, they're sure to fail the physical tryout. As for Feng Wu, she wasn't even a level 1 spiritual master, let alone at level 7 or 8. How was she going to make it? Both Grand Secretary Feng and Priest Wu looked at Feng Wu in resignation. Feng Wu looked back at them. Are you not going to give me recommendations? The last thing Grand Secretary Feng and Priest Wu wanted was to upset the girl. Especially Priest Wu, who said in a hurry, of course we can do that. It's just a letter. A piece of cake. Hearing Priest Wu make his promise, Grand Secretary Feng snapped, between the both of us, she can only get 2 letters. She needs 1 more if she wants to get that exemption. It wouldn't be difficult to find an elder to recommend a level 9 or even level 8 cultivator. However, Feng Wu was a useless girl with no spiritual essence. The more they thought about it, the more inconceivable they found the idea. Priest Wu scratched his head. Well, that is indeed a problem. I know where to get that 3rd recommendation letter. Feng Wu smiled. Where? Priest Wu was amazed. Don't tell me you know someone from the Education Commission. Feng Wu said casually, I know one of the members. Priest Wu was baffled. Will he lie for you and write that recommendation letter? Feng Wu said, he will. On second thought, Priest Wu realized that the girl was a Grandmaster level formation master, and he and old Feng were already convinced. It wasn't unimaginable that she would be able to convince yet another person. Right. What is the registration deadline for Imperial College again? Priest Wu asked all of a sudden. No one answered him for a while. Everyone had been focused on the fact that the exam started in 7 days, but no one remembered when the registration deadline was. Master Bien, who had bruises all over his face, raised his hand gingerly. Everyone turned to look at him. Master Bien darted a glance at Feng Wu, then said quietly, the registration for Imperial College has already closed. What? The others stared at Master Bien in shock. Master Bien nodded tentatively. Master, Xiaoxi is taking the exam this year as well, and I heard her talking about it the other day. Registration closed at noon today. Feng Wu frowned. It was already past noon. Even if she rushed to Imperial College at that moment, it was already too late. Chapter 515, Stop right there. It was closed already. Feng Wu frowned. Priest Wu and Grand Secretary Feng exchanged looks. What do we do now? Xiao Ge was exasperated. Xiao Wu, registration has closed. What are you going to do now? Feng Wu had announced that she was applying for Imperial College, but she had just lost the chance. That was so embarrassing. Feng Wu was also worried. She wouldn't be able to obtain that broken star piece if she didn't get into Imperial College. And without the piece, her beautiful master would never wake up. Therefore, she had to enroll this year. Even if it meant that she had to use special means to get in. Hence, Feng Wu kept her gaze on Grand Secretary Feng. You must have a way for me to register. Am I right? Grand Secretary Feng thought for a moment, frowned, and looked at Priest Wu. I think we can try to talk about it with Mr. Liu. Mr. Liu was the principal of Imperial College. What are we waiting for? Let's go. Priest Wu and Grand Secretary Feng decided to go to Mr. Liu. Feng Wu said, I'm coming with you. Grand Secretary Feng shook his head. Kiddo, take it easy. Maybe we can still work something out. Go back home and wait for our news. After that, Grand Secretary Feng and Priest Wu left together. Meanwhile, Master Bian gave Feng Wu an indecipherable look. After everything the girl had put him through, it was finally her turn. Hahahaha. However, Master Bian was only bold enough to laugh inwardly as he trembled all over from suppressing his laughter. He then turned to leave, so that Feng Wu wouldn't notice his glee. Actually, you can go to Boss June, Xian Yi reminded Feng Wu when he walked past her. He left before Feng Wu could reply. Boss June. Feng Wu had yet to respond when Chaoga asked the question bewilderedly. Was Xian Yi referring to June Linyuan? Feng Wu nodded. Yup. Really? Chaoga frowned, rested her hands on her waist, and flared up. What's wrong with that Xian Yi? Asked the Crown Prince for help. That guy detests you. Helping you is the last thing he'll ever do. He would have helped you back then if he wanted to. But what did he do? He cancelled the engagement and let them banish you to northern border city. The more Chaoga thought about it, the angrier she became. She stomped her foot and yelled after Xian Yi. You! Stop right there. Xian Yi stopped. Chaoga rushed to his side and shouted furiously, Why did you say that? Ha! Xian Yi frowned at Chaoga. Chaoga jabbed his chest with a finger. You know perfectly well how much the Crown Prince dislikes Xiao Wu and you still told her to go to that guy. She's just asking to be humiliated if she did that. Why are you so mean? Xian Yi's eyes flickered and his face turned grim. Why are you trying to set Xiao Wu up? How can anyone be this vile? Chaoga was so pissed. Xian Yi had to take a deep breath and stop himself from losing his temper. He then cast a stern look at Feng Wu. Feng Wu pulled Chaoga away. Forget about it. You can't beat him. Chaoga was rendered speechless. Xian Yi frowned. Boss June treated no one else like he did Feng Wu, but why did everyone think that Boss June was so mean to her? And it seemed that even Feng Wu herself thought that way. If he didn't do anything about that misunderstanding. At that thought, Xian Yi turned to leave. Hey! You! Stop right there. Chaoga shouted after Xian Yi, but Xian Yi ignored her. Before long, he arrived at the Crown Prince's residence. Chapter 516, June Linyuan the Proud. Xian Yi entered the residence and found June Linyuan in the martial arts hall. At the moment, the Crown Prince had just finished practice and was sipping tea by the pond. Seeing Xian Yi, June Linyuan raised an eyebrow and gestured at the other boy to take a seat. I met Feng Wu today. Xian Yi got straight to the point. The casual look on June Linyuan's face faded a little, but he quickly covered it up. Did you? As if he couldn't care less. Xian Yi still hadn't figured out how June Linyuan really felt about Feng Wu and he thought that he could use this chance to carefully observe the Crown Prince. After all, Boss June's attitude toward Feng Wu determined how the others should treat her in the future. That's right. I met her at my grandfather's place. Xian Yi glanced at June Linyuan unhurriedly. The crown prince took a sip of his tea, nodded, then frowned. Why did Xuan Yi stop? Xuan Yi smiled a little and pretended to mention in passing, I was really surprised when I saw her. I didn't know she's such an amazing formation master. Keeping his face straight, Jun Linyuan snorted. Priest Wu and Master Bian were both there, but Master Bian almost cried after what Feng Wu put him through. Hahaha. Of course. His Xiao Wu was the best. The crown prince played with his porcelain teacup and secretly rejoiced. However, he only snorted again. Seeing Jun Linyuan's expressionless face, Xuan Yi changed the subject. By the way, I haven't seen Feng Sun in a while. I wonder how's he doing. Jun Linyuan looked displeased. From Feng Sun, Xuan Yi moved on to cultivation, then to the current situation in the empire, then to the philosophy of life. He noticed Jun Linyuan's face darken and look very impatient. What more did Xuan Yi need to know? The crown prince was in love with Feng Wu. The only problem was that he didn't seem to realize it himself. Agitated, Jun Linyuan was on the verge of kicking over his table when Xuan Yi changed the subject back in time. My grandfather invited Old Man Wu over to appraise this whistling vase and Old Man Wu couldn't stop saying good things about it. Master Bian's face practically turned green. Xiao Wu happened to be outside. Xuan Yi then told Jun Linyuan about everything that happened in the Feng manor. A tiny smile emerged on Jun Linyuan's face as he listened. Xuan Yi had his own agenda and he had been looking closely at Jun Linyuan's facial expressions the entire time. By now, everything was so obvious. When Priest Wu found out that it was Xiao Wu who made that whistling vase, he wouldn't believe it. Do you know what happened after that? Jun Linyuan said arrogantly, how am I supposed to know? Just tell me. Xiao Wu said. Xiao Wu then used just a bit of time to upgrade that master-level formation to a Grandmaster level 1. That shut them up right away and they were so shocked. It was incredible. The crown prince snorted proudly. Of course that girl was the best. Any woman Jun Linyuan liked had to be the best. Xuan Yi was rendered speechless by the proud look on Boss Jun's face. However, he didn't let his surprise show and only went on talking. It turns out that Xiao Wu wants to apply for Imperial College. Jun Linyuan was very pleased. So, the girl was following his order. But, Xuan Yi paused and frowned. Registration for the entrance exam to Imperial College already closed at noon today. Chapter 517, Imperial College. Jun Linyuan frowned. Xuan Yi said, those two elderly men like Xiao Wu so much that they've gone to Imperial College, saying that they were going to talk to Mr. Liu, the head. Xuan Yi then darted a look at Jun Linyuan. The crown prince didn't reply. Xuan Yi then said in a casual tone, Mr. Liu isn't someone who is easily persuaded. So, I don't think Xiao Wu can make it this time. Staring at Xuan Yi, Jun Linyuan said with a darkened face, Xiao Wu. Are you that familiar with her? He then rose to his feet. Xuan Yi was speechless. Was he seriously going to get angry over such a petty matter? Xuan Yi stood up in a hurry. No, I'm not familiar with her at all. I only call her that because Feng Sun does. Hahaha. Poor Feng Sun. That came out of nowhere. Jun Linyuan snorted. Xuan Yi went on, I don't think Mr. Liu will agree. So, Xiao. I mean, Feng Wu won't be able to take the exam this year, I think. Crossing his hands behind his back, Jun Linyuan stared at Xuan Yi in a haughty manner. Do you have nothing better to do? Why are you talking about her all the time? I don't want to listen to it anymore. Xuan Yi took a deep breath. His Royal Highness was really. He then glanced at Feng, who returned his glance with a look of resignation. Xuan Yi's mouth fell open. After Xuan Yi left in resignation, Jun Linyuan remained by the pond. Watching the koi fish swim about in the pond, Jun Linyuan opened his right palm and his fair, slender fingers glistened in the sunlight. For the first time in his life, Feng didn't react in time. He looked at the crown prince in bewilderment as his racked his brain. Linyuan frowned. Only then did Feng realize what his master wanted. He then handed the latter a bag of fish food. Meanwhile, he was having a hard time believing it. After all these years after the pond was built, this was the first time the crown prince had bothered to feed the fish. Linyuan smiled as he sprinkled the fish food in the water. He then said something to Feng. The corner of Feng's mouth twitched. It was as if the crown prince couldn't let a day pass without upsetting Miss Feng Wu at least once. At the same time, Grand Secretary Feng and Priest Wu still weren't back from Imperial College. In the Feng manner, Xiao Wu, do you think Grand Secretary Feng will succeed? Feng Wu waited patiently, but Chaoga couldn't stop walking around the room. Mr. Liu will agree to Grand Secretary Feng's request, won't he? And there's Priest Wu, too. Feng Wu had no idea what was going to happen. Somehow, she had a bad feeling about it. She couldn't sit still anymore. Come. Let's go to Imperial College to have a look ourselves. All right. Chaoga agreed without hesitation. Imperial College was in the northern suburbs of the imperial capital. It was an unbelievably vast building complex. The college alone took up a quarter of the imperial capital. The magnificent building was covered in a dense layer of spiritual essence, and one felt like sitting down to cultivate as soon as they approached the building. This is a perfect place for cultivation. Chaoga was pleasantly surprised. Xiao Wu, I think I'm ready to break through again. Imperial College was indeed as incredible as it was said to be. Even the air was filled with spiritual energy and something ancient, which could calm one's mind without knowing it. Wait. Feng Wu narrowed her eyes. She had a vague feeling of being drawn to a secret power inside the college, which seemed to make her blood boil in excitement. How strange. Exactly what was that power? Something then stirred inside Feng Wu. Like Chaoga, Feng Wu felt like she could break through as well. Feng Wu made up her mind that she had to get into Imperial College, even if it was just for that mysterious power alone. Imperial College had an open day every week, and today just happened to be one of those days. While Feng Wu and Chaoga were. Chapter 518, Confrontation. As Feng Wu and Chaoga walked into Imperial College, the effect of that dense spiritual essence grew more obvious. I could totally sit down right now and make a breakthrough, Chaoga said in excitement. So, they had to get into this Imperial College. It would do wonders for their cultivation. What? Just then, a cold voice rang out. Feng Wu, what are you doing here in Imperial College? It was an angry, hostile voice. Turning around, Feng Wu saw Feng Sang, who was glaring at her with a grim face. Feng Sang. Of course Feng Wu recognized her cousin right away. Feng Sang had two friends with her and both eyed Feng Wu curiously. Feng Wu turned around, and the look in Feng Sang's eyes grew more ferocious. Imperial College isn't a place you can just enter casually. I don't have time for this. Get out. Now. She sounded extremely impatient and malicious. Feng Wu almost rolled her eyes. The two girls with Feng Sang asked her in a whisper, who's she? Is there bad blood between the both of you? One of them said, Sang, you're never this irritable. Who is she? What has she done? The two girls were Guanjing and Tao Yu. Feng Sang said in a cold, contemptuous voice, who else? My incredible fifth sister, of course. Fifth sister? As in Feng Wu. Both Guanjing and Tao Yu were from the imperial capital and knew all about the girl prodigy in Feng Sang's family. I see. Guanjing looked enlightened. So that's her. That cripple, Feng Wu. Tao Yu gloated, didn't His Royal Highness cancel his engagement to her? Feng Sang's face was livid and she glowered at Feng Wu. You're a shame to our family. How dare you show up here? Get the hell out. Feng Wu had yet to reply, but Chaoga wouldn't have it. To Chaoga, Feng Wu was the cleverest and the most incredible person in the world. Even Jun Linyuan couldn't match her in talent. Hey! Resting her hands on her waist, Chaoga glared at Feng Sang. Who the hell are you? Don't flatter yourself. We're not here for you. Not everything in this world is about you. Feng Sang had always been a proud person and she was furious at that comment. And who might you be? Feng Sang snapped. I'm Duan Chaoga. Remember that name. Chaoga jabbed Feng Sang's shoulder with a finger. Disrespect Xiao Wu like that again and I'll kill you. Wow, I'm so scared. Infuriated, Feng Sang rolled her eyes. So, it's you, Duan Chaoga. Feng Sang snorted. Weren't you the one who followed Feng Wu around all the time? You're an idiot. I see why you were with her when she was a genius, but she's useless now. You have to be an imbecile to stick with her. Smack. Feng Wu smacked Feng Sang hard. Shut your mouth. Feng Sang. Pressing a palm to her swollen left cheek, Feng Sang said in disbelief, You hit me. Feng Wu, how dare you hit me? How dare a good-for-nothing hit her? However, when Feng Sang met Feng Wu's gaze and saw eyes as black as an abyss, somehow, a chill ran down Feng Sang's spine. Because this was taking place on a main road, it soon caught the attention of a lot of passers-by. Chapter 519, You people know nothing. Just then, someone else interjected. Why, isn't that Feng Sang? Did someone hit her? OMG. That girl is stunning. Who is she? Feng Sang, who's the girl? Yes, tell us. Who is she? That was what the female students were thinking when they spotted Feng Wu, who made them feel jealous despite themselves. Whereas the guys had different thoughts. I can't believe a girl can be this beautiful. Is she one of our students? She can't be, otherwise I would have spotted her a long time ago. She looks amazing. She's exactly what my dream girl looks like. Feng Sang seems to know her. That's it. She's the one. Everyone fall back. People kept gathering around them, making for a boisterous scene. All eyes were on Feng Wu, with some gazes envious, some begrudging, some amazed, and some fascinated. After being slapped by Feng Wu, and now surrounded by all these onlookers, the sensitive Feng Sang almost passed out with fury. Feng Wu. I'm gonna kill you. With that, she drew a soft sword from around her waist. Thud. Once she injected her spiritual essence into the weapon, the blade straightened and turned as hard as a cast-iron sword. While everyone was still watching, Feng Sang charged at Feng Wu, directing the sword at the point between Feng Wu's eyebrows. Chaoga flared up. However, Feng Wu only stood there with a taunting smile on her face. She was already a level 3 spiritual grandmaster. Did Feng Sang actually think she could beat Feng Wu? How silly! Almost all the onlookers here were freshmen, and Feng Wu could beat any one of them without breaking a sweat. The sword had almost reached Feng Wu when Chaoga ran out and shielded Feng Wu with her own body. Feng Sang, what are you doing? Feng Sang, put the sword down. Have you forgotten the school rule? No fighting is allowed in Imperial College unless it's in the battle arena. All the guys were displeased to see Feng Sang frenziedly attack Feng Wu with a sword. They immediately rushed out, shielding Feng Wu behind them and reprimanding Feng Sang harshly. It would have been fine if it was only one of them, but there were so many. Feng Sang was almost in tears. A lot of these boys had courted Feng Sang before, but now, they were all on Feng Wu's side, just because Feng Wu was prettier than she was. Feng Sang was so angry. Get out of my way! Feng Sang yelled. Forgetting herself like this wasn't Feng Sang's usual style at all. However, after what Chaoga said and having been slapped by Feng Wu, Feng Sang completely lost control when she saw how the guys treated Feng Wu differently. Feng Sang! What are you doing? Rong Shixin glared at Feng Sang. Why can't you be civil and talk it over? What's with the sword? This is unacceptable. Xuan was the president of the student union for the first years, and he was in charge of all his peers. Right now, he was glowering at Feng as well. You're way out of line. She's younger and less advanced in cultivation than you, but that doesn't give you the right to bully her like this. Drop the sword now. All the other guys threw dirty looks at Feng as well. Feng almost passed out from fury. Eyes bloodshot red, she yelled, "You people know nothing. Get out of my way. Do you have any idea who she is? She's Feng Wu." Feng Wu? Who was that? After all, it had been 5 years, and not everyone had that long a memory. Chapter 520, yes, we're on her side. However, enough people could still remember. Feng Wu. As in that prodigy Feng Wu. Isn't she dead? No, I heard that she's still alive, but her clan banished her to their hometown. Is she the one whose engagement to His Royal Highness was cancelled? So, that's who she is. All eyes were on Feng Wu and everyone was talking. Feng looked very pleased. She knew it. As soon as she revealed Feng Wu's history, everyone would laugh at her. No one would take Feng Wu's side anymore. Feng pointed her sword at Feng Wu. Feng Wu, kneel and apologize to me now, or I'll kill you this instant. Crossing her hands behind her back, Feng Wu looked at Feng with her calm, bright eyes. The look she gave Feng made the latter feel like a pathetic clown. Feng knew perfectly well what that contemptuous look meant. Which was why she was so pissed. Fine. Fine. Suit yourself. Feng Wu, you had it coming. Don't blame me. With those words, Feng came at Feng Wu with the sword. However, at that moment, Rong Shixin caught Feng by her wrist. Xuan blocked her way and fixed his cold gaze on her. Most of the other guys glared at Feng as well. Feng was utterly baffled. Hadn't she told them about Feng Wu's past? Shouldn't these people be sneering at Feng Wu now? What was going on here? Rong Shixin was displeased. Feng I finally see what kind of person you really are. Rong Shixin ground his teeth. Your sister lost her cultivation ability, which was so unfortunate for her. Not only didn't you show any sympathy or look out for her, you revealed the saddest thing that happened to her in front of so many people, putting her wound out there for all to see. You're despicable. Feng was speechless. What? Xuan stared at Feng as well. Feng I'd always attributed your aloof behavior to the fact that you're above worldly considerations and that you're as pure and elegant as a white lotus. There was a time that I actually admired you. I never thought that you could be this cruel and evil. I guess I judged poorly. Taking a fancy to you was the worst decision I ever made. What? Feng almost had a stroke. Xuan was the most talented and capable student of all the first years. Even Mr. Liu had received Xuan himself. So many girls were infatuated with Xuan, and even Feng had a secret crush on him. However, Xuan had just said those words to her. Feng thought she was going to explode. She pointed the sword at Feng Wu. You! I'm gonna kill you. I will. Xuan waved his hand and Feng stumbled back, then fell to the ground. Xuan then turned to Feng Wu and cupped his fists. Miss Feng Wu, nice to meet you. My name is Xuan. Please remember that name. He gave Feng Wu a nod, then left. Feng Wu was baffled. Hello? Why should I remember your name? What's wrong with that guy? Rong Shixin was much more enthusiastic. So, you're Feng Wu. Hello, I'm Rong Shixin, you can call me Xiao Xian. Can I call you Xiao Wu? That naturally sociable manner reminded Feng Wu of Feng Sun. She shook her head and said indifferently, I don't think so. The others burst out laughing. Rong Shixin rubbed his nose. He was from a good family. His father was a lord and a third-ranked official, which made him a respected member of the younger generation. Chapter 521, Preposterous. After he got into Imperial College, he had become even more popular. However, Feng Wu had just turned him down outright. But Rong Shixin believed that Feng Wu was only playing hard to get. Girls like her were so much fun to court, weren't they? Feng Wu frowned at the hubbub. She took Chaoga's hand, then turned to leave. Xiao Wu. Rong Shixin ran after her. Feng Wu cast a stern look at him. Rong Shixin felt as if he had been stabbed in the heart. He got the creeps and he stumbled back involuntarily. That was strange. Hadn't Feng Wu lost all her cultivation ability? Why was she so scary? Feng Wu. What are you doing here in Imperial College? Are you here to hit on guys? Feng Sang's voice rang out behind them. Guan Jing chuckled. Is she here to tour the school? She won't be able to enroll anyway, so why not use the open day to enjoy the view? Many of the girls snickered at those words. They looked at Feng Wu in such a condescending manner. So what if she had once been a genius? She was completely useless now. She wasn't even qualified to take the exam, let alone become a student of Imperial College. If I recall correctly, our school is recruiting new students in a few days, right? That's right. You have to be a level 9 spiritual master at least to take the exam. Too bad that some people don't even meet that. All they can do is lure guys in with that pretty face. Hahaha, now I know why Feng Wu is here. Why is that? Because, since she can't get into Imperial College herself, she has to depend on that pretty face. She's going to find a rich husband here, isn't she? Hahaha, many girls laughed upon hearing those words. Feng Wu was so beautiful that the guys couldn't help but take her side. As a result, many girls turned Feng Wu into their imaginary enemy. Rong Shixin, you're just one of the potential money bags she's digging into, hahaha. Rong Shixin, wake up. She's casting her net all over the place. Rong Shixin, are you seriously going to take a useless girl back home? That's just humiliating. Rong Shixin's face turned livid. Exasperated, Chaoga rested her hands on her waist as tears welled up in her eyes. Shut up. Xiao Wu can't get into Imperial College. Says who? We're here today to register. Wowed, a hush fell over the crowd at those words. Everyone gave Chaoga strange looks. Feng Sang rubbed her ears. What did you say? Sticking out her chest, Chaoga said righteously, I said Xiao Wu is here to register for Imperial College's entrance exam. And she's not the only one. I'm going to take the exam as well. Hahaha. Oh God, that's hilarious. My tummy aches, help. Hahaha, I'm cracking up here. That has to be the funniest thing I've ever heard. Many girls laughed until their stomachs ached. Oh God. A useless girl without so much as a streak of spiritual essence was going to take the exam? As for that silly girl Chaoga, she was a level 7 at best. How dare she talk about taking the exam as well? That was preposterous. Rong Shixin also looked at Chaoga strangely. You. Chapter 522, There's one possibility. Chaoga was furious. What was wrong with these people? She and Feng Wu were here just to register for the entrance exam. Xiao Wu was so smart and brilliant that she could surpass them without breaking a sweat. Where did their sense of superiority come from? And what made them think that they could laugh at Xiao Wu like this? That pissed Chaoga off. She made up her mind that she would become an excellent cultivator. One day, she would be strong enough to sneer at all those people who used to laugh at Xiao Wu. Hahaha, just look at that butterball. She's cross. She looks so funny with her cheeks puffed up. Hahaha, are you seeing this? The butterball wants to kill us with her eyes. Oh my, I think the butterball wants to fight us to death. By butterball, they were obviously referring to Chowga. All those butterballs infuriated Chowga. No teenage girl would want such a nickname, especially one that used to be so pretty. Tears welled up in her eyes, and her back looked both stubborn and sad. Feng Wu's hand landed on her shoulder. Chowga turned around with red-rimmed eyes. Silly girl. Feng Wu rubbed her head. You'll soon be as fit as you were. I promise. Chowga beamed at Feng Wu with tears in her eyes. Wiping away her tears, Chiogo looked up at Feng Wu, whom she trusted, and nodded with a smile. Yes. However, Rong Shixin was looking at Feng Wu in a sympathetic way. Are you really going to register for the exam? Yes. Feng Wu nodded. Rong Shixin didn't know what to say. Guanjing snickered all of a sudden. What? Correct me if I'm wrong, but hasn't registration closed already? That's right. It closed at noon, didn't it? It's already the afternoon now, hahaha. Many gave Feng Wu funny looks. Some even sneered. If you're really going to find an excuse, at least find a plausible one. How are you going to register when the deadline has already passed? Well, maybe she really is here to do that. Don't be so harsh. Guanjing said, she really is here to do that? Don't make me laugh. One is a level 7 at most, and the other has no cultivation ability whatsoever. You're telling me that they're here to register for the exam? Guanjing went on, there's one possibility, though. What's that? Guanjing said, I heard that the school has a special rule. If a person can get recommendation letters from 3 members of the Board of Education, they can be treated as an exceptional case and be registered. Hahaha. Many onlookers laughed until they were in tears. Those 2. Get letters from the big shots? And 3 of them? You've got to be kidding me. No way. No one was going to believe that. Chowga trembled with fury. You snobs. 2 of the big guys already gave us letters, and we'll get the 3rd one. However, the others only guffawed. Feng Wu shook her head and tugged at Chowga. Let's go. There was nothing more to say to these people. Feng Wu then led Chowga toward the president's office. Many were looking forward to making fun of her. Look, hahaha, Feng Wu is going to the president's office. Guanjing said, well, after what she said, she can't just leave, right? The least she can do is make a show of it. Where else can she go if not the president's office? Hahaha. Chapter 523, The President of Imperial College. The Principal's Office. Every day, Mr. Liu would recline on a chaise lounge for some rest after he was done with his cultivation. A young servant gingerly entered the room and whispered something in Mr. Liu's ear. Grand Secretary Feng and Priest Wu were here together. Weren't those 2 fighting all the time? He wondered what the fight was about this time. Rubbing his forehead, Mr. Liu smiled wryly. It seemed that he wasn't going to get that rest this evening after all. Please show them in. Mr. Liu gave a wave of his hand. Before long, Grand Secretary Feng and Priest Wu walked in together. Old Liu, there you are. Good. Grand Secretary Feng greeted the president with those words. Priest Wu looked delighted as well. Hahaha, Old Liu. Here, sit with me and let's talk. Ha! Mr. Liu found this very unusual. Weren't these 2 at each other's throats all the time? Especially the proud Grand Secretary Feng, who looked down on Priest Wu for not being professionally trained. Whereas Priest Wu had a short temper and despised those that thought highly of themselves. Hence, these 2 people would start a cockfight whenever they ran into each other, which was such a pain in the neck. However, they didn't seem to be fighting at all today. Mr. Liu looked at the 2 of them in bewilderment. Priest Wu pulled Mr. Liu near, then sat the latter down at the table. There, Old Liu. Take a seat first. That gave Mr. Liu the creeps. On the other side, Grand Secretary Feng laid a piece of paper in front of him and rubbed an ink stick on an inkstone himself. Mr. Liu was astonished. Was this an illusion? Grand Secretary Feng was such a proud figure that his most common posture was his hands crossed behind his back and his chin raised. Even Mr. Liu himself wasn't treated much differently from everyone else. But now that the old man had laid out a piece of paper for him, and he was even preparing the ink. What was more, Grand Secretary Feng even dipped the writing brush in the ink, then handed it to Mr. Liu. Mr. Liu didn't know how to react. What on earth is going on here? He was so flustered. Priest Wu said, "We ran into a girl recently and she has an amazing gift for formations. But cultivation-wise, she's a little bit behind, and she wants to become a student of Imperial College." Mr. Liu gave him a wry smile. Let her apply for the formation department then. He didn't understand what was bothering these two. Priest Wu and Grand Secretary Feng both gave Mr. Liu woeful looks. What? Those expressions made Mr. Liu rather jumpy. Priest Wu said with a long face, "We wouldn't have come here if she could apply for the formation department." Grand Secretary Feng sighed. "To be honest, what more can we teach her there?" Priest Wu sighed along with him. "The girl is as good as either of us in formations. How are we supposed to teach her when she gets in?" Mr. Liu's eyes lit up. They had found such a promising student. He was instantly intrigued. For Priest Wu and Grand Secretary Feng had never recommended anyone before. This time, however, they couldn't stop praising this girl and were doing things that were so out of character for them. Mr. Liu was so curious. And the girl wants to get into the martial arts department. Both Priest Wu and Grand Secretary Feng gave Mr. Liu woeful looks. "Take the exam, then." Mr. Liu shrugged. "What's wrong with that? If she passes the exam, she can get in." Priest Wu and Grand Secretary Feng exchanged looks and Priest Wu said in the end, "The girl wanted to, but..." "But what?" "But she's not as strong in all the subjects. Her cultivation level is a little." Chapter 524, I need to see her. "Not as strong? You mean that she hasn't reached level 9 yet?" "Yes. That shouldn't be a problem." Mr. Liu waved his hand matter-of-factly. "Real talent is hard to come by. Don't we have an exemption rule here in Imperial College? As long as 3 members of the education board." He stopped abruptly and looked from Grand Secretary Feng to Priest Wu. And those two nodded back at him. Mr. Liu said, "That's why you've been fawning on me the whole time. You're here for that letter." Priest Wu chuckled. "Brother Liu, Boss Liu, it's like you said. She has real talent and that's so hard to come by. You also said she's not as strong in all subjects." Mr. Liu was disgruntled. "Exactly how weak is she in the other subjects that you two have to go this far?" Mr. Liu couldn't understand. Both old men were valuable assets of the empire. One was usually arrogant and the other irascible, and both were equally stubborn. It was amazing to see them work as a team to ingratiate themselves with Mr. Liu. Well, both old men were embarrassed to bring up the subject and looked at one another. Mr. Liu rubbed his chin. If her performance is so lopsided and her formation skills so amazing, it has to be her cultivation level that's not as advanced. How bad? Level 9. Both old men shook their heads. Level 8? They shook their heads again. Level 7? Still shaking. Level 6. The look on Mr. Liu's face began to change. Both old men remained silent. "Don't tell me that she's only a level 5. Mr. Liu jumped to his feet. "That wasn't lopsided, but was completely." "No," Priest Wu said gingerly after glancing at Mr. Liu. Mr. Liu asked, "So what level is she?" He had lost all hope after hearing that she wasn't even a level 5. "She has none." Grand Secretary Feng scratched his head awkwardly. Mr. Liu burst into laughter. "Hahaha, you two are really Have you come all this way just to tell me a joke? None. That makes her an ordinary non-cultivator. You. Seeing the looks on Grand Secretary Feng and Priest Wu's faces, Mr. Lu stopped short. You're telling the truth. Grand Secretary Feng and Priest Wu smiled at him in embarrassment. Mr. Lu made a last-ditch attempt. If her spiritual essence hasn't been activated. Priest Wu smiled bitterly. To be more precise, the girl lost all her cultivation ability. She has no spiritual essence at all. Mr. Lu was speechless. To have lost her cultivation ability was worse than to have unactivated spiritual essence. He sat back down, leaned back in his chair, and became very quiet. He sat up all of a sudden, stared at the other two, and said in a solemn tone, "You do realize that spiritual essence is fundamental to formations? Without it, the girl won't be able to get too far in the study of formations." Priest Wu and Grand Secretary Feng exchanged looks and both smiled bitterly. "Old Lu, how much further do you want her formation skills to go? At her current level, the things she has shown us are already as advanced as what we can do." And these two old men were top formation masters in all of the empire. Mr. Lu rubbed his chin. "It's not that I don't believe you, but at least, I need to see her first." Chapter 525, Mr. Principal. "I'm sure you'll like her," Priest Wu said cheerfully. Mr. Lu snorted. "Not necessarily." Just as Grand Secretary Feng was about to send for Feng Wu. Footsteps came from outside. The young servant entered the room and said in a low voice, "Miss Feng Wu is here." Mr. Lu threw a dirty look at Grand Secretary Feng and Priest Wu. "I see you came prepared." Grand Secretary Feng and Priest Wu rubbed their chins. They had told Xiao Wu to stay behind, but she had still come. However, the timing was perfect. Feng Wu walked in with Chaoga. Mr. Lu stared at Feng Wu with eyes as cold and deep as a dark abyss. It was rather terrifying. Chaoga shuddered and hid behind Feng Wu. However, Feng Wu had kept her composure since entering the room. She was graceful, undisturbed, and completely unaffected by Mr. Lu's aura. Mr. Lu looked confused. Why did this girl look familiar? "And you are?" "Mr. Lu, my name is Feng Wu replied. Chaoga shuddered, then followed suit. "I'm Duan Chaoga." This man was the head of Imperial College, whose superiority was second only to the Emperor. Even Chaoga's grandfather couldn't get an audience with this man. Chaoga was so excited. Mr. Lu was rather surprised. Wasn't the girl afraid of him at all? Priest Wu said in a hurry, "She's the one. She's as advanced in her formation skills as one can be, but her cultivation level is not as satisfying." Mr. Lu darted a look at Priest Wu. "Not as satisfying? She couldn't cultivate at all." Mr. Lu frowned. Grand Secretary Feng said, "Once Xiao Wu is admitted into Imperial College, she can always go to the formation department if the martial arts department won't have her." Mr. Lu waved Grand Secretary Feng off and kept his gaze on Feng Wu. "Feng Wu, where have I heard that name before?" "That's it. You're the Feng Wu." Mr. Lu looked shocked. How could he not know that name? Feng Wu used to be a prodigy second only to Jun Linyuan, and was a figure that had amazed everyone. She had only been 8 back then, but Mr. Lu had already wished to take her in as a student of Imperial College so that he could teach her himself and prevent her from going astray or bringing harm to herself. He never thought that the next time they met would be 5 years later. "Yes, I'm that Feng Wu." Feng Wu smiled. When Mr. Lu looked at Feng Wu again, he felt very sorry for her. That amazing girl had become a good-for-nothing. It pained him to think about it. Mr. Lu shook his head and heaved a long sigh. "Kiddo, you have no cultivation ability, which means that the martial arts department isn't the right place for you," Mr. Lu said sincerely. "You should choose the formation department. You'll do wonderfully there." Even Mr. Lu had to admire Feng Wu's capability. When a door shut, God opened a window for her, and she was as much a genius as before. Mr. Lu felt so sorry for the girl. The Empire had lost more than just a great potential warrior. Mr. Lu couldn't bring himself to see Feng Wu this way. He gave a wave of his hand. Please leave. He wouldn't let Feng Wu enroll in the martial arts department. For one, it would pain him so much to see the once genius girl become an ordinary person. For another, Feng Wu wouldn't be able to take it when she saw all her peers make progress when she couldn't. Chapter 526, Hahahaha. For those two reasons, Mr. Lu turned Feng Wu down before she had a chance to speak. Grand Secretary Feng and Priest Wu were shocked. How could that be? Mr. Lu! Mr. Lu! Both old men cried out in unison. Would Mr. Lu ignore their request outright? Mr. Lu was very straightforward. She isn't an ideal choice for the martial arts department, nor for Imperial College. Therefore, no. Once Mr. Lu put it that way, there was nothing more Grand Secretary Feng and Priest Wu could say. They turned to Feng Wu and sighed. Xiao Wu, it's out of our hands now. You. Feng Wu shook her head adamantly. Mr. Feng, Mr. Wu, may I have a minute alone with Mr. Lu? Mr. Lu smirked. Feng Wu. I don't care what you're going to say. I said no, and no it is. Moreover, registration has closed, and at least for this year, you've lost your chance. He practically shouted those words. He hoped that he could make Feng Wu see some sense that way. However, what he didn't know was that because of the earlier incident, many were eager to know what was going on with Feng Wu, so much so that quite a few students were lingering outside the principal's office. Among those students were Guanjing and Rong Shixin. Guanjing grinned when she heard the principal's words. She dashed off toward the Year 1 cultivation room. I've got news. Big news. Her voice reached the room before she did. What is it? Guanjing, didn't you follow Feng Wu out to see how defeated she would be when she left? Has she gone already? Did she really get into the principal's office? Everyone was curious. Feng Sang was in the crowd and she looked at Guanjing with unblinking eyes. Guanjing went up to Feng Sang, and only when all eyes were on her did she say in a gloating voice, I think everyone knows what Feng Wu did just then. Yes. I followed Feng Wu out just then and saw her go all the way to the principal's office. Wow! She really went there? How? Then what? Did she register? Guanjing shushed the others with a hand gesture. A hush fell over the crowd. It turned out that Guanjing was unable to hold back her laughter. She laughed and laughed until she trembled all over and tears streaked her cheeks. Everyone was bewildered. What on earth happened? Why was Guanjing laughing so hard? Tell us. That's right. Stop laughing. Tell us now. You're killing me here. Guanjing finally managed to stop laughing, and in a trembling voice, she said, Feng Wu did indeed see Mr. Lu, and Mr. Lu talked to her. What? Everyone was jealous and excited. Mr. Lu was such a superior figure that one couldn't just see him as they pleased. But Feng Wu had been granted an audience. They would be lying if they didn't admit that they were jealous. Guanjing went on. Feng Wu did indeed see Mr. Lu. Why am I so certain? Because I heard Mr. Lu talk to her. Mr. Lu said, Feng Wu. I don't care what you're going to say. I said no, and no it is. Moreover, registration has closed, and at least for this year, you've lost your chance. Chapter 527, Old Man Ba's Letter. Everyone fell silent after Guanjing said those words. They burst into laughter right after that. Ha ha ha. Ha ha ha. Ha 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 ha. Many of them laughed so hard that they were in tears and trembled all over. Some even lay flat on their stomachs and thumped the ground with their fists. Ha ha ha, Feng Wu so had that coming. Mr. Lu was so right. He said no, and no it is. That girl should just shut up. Registration has long closed. Did Feng Wu think that the school would bend the rules just for her? She really thinks too highly of herself. Who the hell does she think she is? Many of the girls had a biased opinion of Feng Wu to begin with and weren't able to judge objectively. They couldn't be happier to hear about Feng Wu's predicament and used all the sarcastic and contemptuous words they could think of. Meanwhile, in the principal's office, Grand Secretary Feng and Priest Wu exchanged looks after Mr. Lu's announcement, and both saw resignation in each other's eyes. After all, Mr. Lu was the one who called the shots here in Imperial College. Hence, they lost all hope. Xiao Wu. Priest Wu wanted to show Feng Wu out. However, Feng Wu kept her gaze on Mr. Lu the whole time and looked completely undisturbed. The girl had the bearing of a great general. Mr. Lu, who was always looking for new talent, felt even more sorry for Feng Wu now and couldn't bring himself to look at her. Grand Secretary Feng and Priest Wu finally realized what kind of girl Feng Wu really was. She was the most stubborn girl they had ever met. When she set her mind on something, she wouldn't let her decision be affected by anyone. Well. The two old men shook their heads and left the room. Kiddo, even if you go down on your knees and plead with your tears, you won't be able to change my mind. This is my final verdict. Mr. Lu gave a disclaimer first to exclude any possibilities. Feng Wu smiled. I'm not going to kneel, but I do have a letter for you. Mr. Lu frowned at Feng Wu. Meanwhile, Feng Wu took a thick envelope out of her chest pocket and put it on the table. That was way too thick for an ordinary letter. The frown on Mr. Lu's face grew bigger. Judging by how certain the girl looked, could she have stuffed the envelope with money? The look Mr. Lu gave Feng Wu was even more stern now. A person could be without cultivation ability, but he wouldn't stand for such despicable behavior. At that thought, Mr. Lu didn't even look at the envelope, but only stared at Feng Wu. Take it back. He really didn't like this girl now. Feng Wu looked at Mr. Lu in bewilderment. According to Old Man Ba, he and Mr. Lu had gone through hell together and were best buddies. But from the way Mr. Lu reacted to the letter, he didn't seem to know Old Man Ba at all. You really don't want to have a look? No. Mr. Lu refused her outright. Feng Wu frowned. But. Not buts. Mr. Lu's face was livid. Get out. Now. He had determined that Feng Wu was here to bribe him and he was furious. That explained her behavior. She had asked those two guys to leave first so that she could stay behind and bribe him. Feng Wu, I'm so disappointed at what you've become. Get out. Get out of my sight. Mr. Lu said sternly. Feng Wu sighed and said in a sorry tone, so much for being Old Man Ba's best buddy. He told me that when you two were in Inferno City, he shielded you from a sword with his own body and he barely survived that wound. Old Man Ba. Mr. Lu asked. Chapter 528, June Linyuan. Come out. Old Man Ba. Mr. Lu shot up from his chair and grabbed Feng Wu by her wrist. Old Man Ba. Which Old Man Ba? Feng Wu looked at him innocently. You haven't heard of Old Man Ba? But the guy said that he was pretty well known in the Imperial capital. Was he just bragging, then? You mean Ba-yi? Mr. Lu cried out in surprise. I have no idea. Old Man Ba never told us his real name, he was only Master Ba, Dr. Ba, or Miracle Ba to us. Mr. Lu was exasperated and reached out with a hand. Give me that letter. Feng Wu glanced at him unhurriedly. I thought you didn't want to read it no matter what. Mr. Lu couldn't wait any longer and snatched the letter from Feng Wu. He saw the words on the envelope. For Lu the Third's eyes only. Yes. That was the man's handwriting. Mr. Lu tore the envelope open in a hurry. In it was a thick stack of papers, not the money he had assumed it was. It took Mr. Liu as long as 15 minutes to finish reading the long letter. Afterwards, Mr. Liu sat dazed in his chair and was lost in thought. Chaoga stared at Mr. Liu in bewilderment, then poked Feng Wu with a finger. Xiao Wu. What's going on with Mr. Liu? He looked so sad. Stirred by Chaoga's voice, Mr. Liu looked at Feng Wu and felt as if he had woken up in another world. Little Feng Wu, did you say that you were going to apply for the martial arts department? Yes. Feng Wu nodded. Mr. Liu narrowed his eyes and looked conflicted. You do realize that insisting on getting into the martial arts department isn't going to do you any good? Mr. Liu said earnestly. Feng Wu smiled and said proudly, I know what I'm doing. Mr. Liu nodded. Despite her young age, she gave Mr. Liu the feeling that he was talking to an adult. What was more, she was more level-headed than a lot of adults he knew. The majority of that long letter talked about how amazing Feng Wu was. She was smart, hardworking, talented, and so on. Mr. Liu almost frowned. Wasn't that a bit too exaggerated? If that's the case, well. Mr. Liu was going to grant Feng Wu her wish. Chaoga almost jumped to her feet in excitement when all of a sudden that young servant came in hastily and whispered something in Mr. Liu's ear. Mr. Liu looked confused, but rose to his feet anyway. He then turned to Feng Wu and Chaoga. Xiao Wu, how about you take your friend inside and find a book to read? Feng Wu realized that he was receiving a distinguished guest. No problem. As soon as Feng Wu and Chaoga went into the study, footsteps came from outside. Mr. Liu. Feng Wu found that voice rather familiar. She had heard it somewhere before. Mr. Liu greeted the man with a nod. General Chang, to what do I owe this pleasure? General Chang. As in Chang San, who worked for Jun Linyuan. Chang San smiled. Mr. Liu, you flatter me. I'm here to bring a message from His Royal Highness. Of course. Chang San smiled. His Royal Highness said that if a Miss Feng Wu comes here to ask for your help, please turn her down. Mr. Liu's pupils contracted and he stared at Chang San. As the principal of Imperial College, Mr. Liu was only below the emperor in status, and he was roughly on the same level as the crown prince. Chapter 529, Miss Feng is here. What? Jun Linyuan himself was a student of Imperial College, but he was giving commands to his principal now. Mr. Liu was a little displeased. Chang San nodded. That was His Royal Highness's instruction, word for word. His Royal Highness also said that he'll owe you one. Jun Linyuan said that. Well, that was. What if I insist on doing as I please? Mr. Liu stroked his beard and said casually. Chang San chuckled. No one has ever said no to His Royal Highness. That was, apart from that fierce, untamed Miss Feng Wu, Chang San added in his head. So, if I don't do as told, His Royal Highness is going to cause me to lose my job? Mr. Liu took a deep breath and there was anger in his eyes. Chang San smiled. Mr. Liu, you're overthinking it. That's all I have to say. Goodbye. Feng Wu and Chaoga were right in the study and the room wasn't exactly soundproof. Hence, they heard everything Chang San and Mr. Liu said. Chaoga flared up. As impulsive as she always was, she rushed out from behind the curtain and yelled at Chang San. Who the hell are you? What do you mean by turning Feng Wu away? Why can't we apply for Imperial College? Why do you care? How can you do such nasty deeds behind our back? You people are despicable and nosy and evil. Chang San stared at Chaoga in disbelief. The girl had just yelled at him. And he wasn't the only one she had lashed out at. Even His Royal Highness had been insulted. Someone in this world was actually bold enough to curse the crown prince. Chang San was too astonished to react. Chaoga, on the other hand, didn't realize how shocking her words were. She shoved Chang San hard and the latter stumbled backward. Chang San looked at Chaoga in disbelief. Resting her hands on her waist, Chowga snapped, stop gawking. We heard everything you said. Every word of it. Humph. Chong San looked behind Chowga and spotted Feng Wu, who had an indecipherable look on her face. Chong San was at a loss over what to say. No, no, no. Miss Feng Wu was here. What? The muscles in Chong San's cheeks twitched, his mouth fell open, and his mind went blank. This fifth daughter of the Feng clan hadn't intimidated him at the beginning, for even Feng Yanfeng had to address him as General Chong. However, after Feng's reminder the other day, he would rather offend His Royal Highness than piss Miss Feng Wu off. She was untouchable. Chong San put on a bitter face and didn't know what to do. Feng Wu kept her gaze on him as she went up to him. She then smiled casually. Your master said himself that if I came to Mr. Lu for help, I should be turned away. Feng Wu's voice was as light as a feather and very calm. However, if one looked closely enough, they would recognize the look in her eyes as the momentary peace before a storm. Chong San was flustered. He didn't know how to answer that question, so in a whoosh, Chong San jumped out the window and was soon out of sight. Feng Wu was speechless. So was Chowga. And Mr. Lu. Mr. Lu turned to Feng Wu and said in a stern voice, Xiao Wu, it's not that I won't help you, but you heard it yourself. His Royal Highness won't leave you alone. Feng Wu gritted her teeth and flames seemed to shoot out of her eyes as she clenched her fists. Mr. Lu smiled bitterly. Since His Royal Highness has decided to step in, even if I write that letter for you, His Royal Highness will find some other way to interfere. He can still make it impossible for you. Chapter 530, Miss Wu is here. Chowga was exasperated. But why? He's the Crown Prince, but you're the principal of Imperial College. How can he order you around? Didn't some former principal punish a Crown Prince once, and no harm came to him afterward? Mr. Lu smiled bitterly. That's right. I enjoy the same status as His Royal Highness, but times have changed. This is June Linyuan's time. Please listen to me. The two of you, especially Xiao Wu, should pack your things and leave the imperial capital. Kiddo, it's so obvious that the Crown Prince doesn't like you. Feng Wu took a deep breath and looked at Mr. Lu. So, I can take the exam if June Linyuan says yes? Of course, said Mr. Lu. Everything will be fine if you can persuade His Royal Highness. But His Royal Highness dislikes you so much that he sent someone with that reminder. How are you going to change his mind? That's just not going to happen. Mr. Lu gave Feng Wu a sympathetic look, then heaved a sigh. Feng Wu promptly left the office, so fast that she looked like a gust of wind. She was furious. Chowga wanted to follow Feng Wu, but the latter stopped her. Go to General Secretary Feng and start working on the written exam. After all, we only have 7 days. Time is of the essence here. Mr. Lu didn't know what to say. Grand Secretary Feng and Priest Wu, who had come back in, were also speechless. Chowga said with a long face, Xiao Wu, we can't even register for the exam, what's the point preparing for it? It's a waste of our energy. Says who? I'm going to take the exam and no one is going to stop me. Feng Wu flared up. He was the one who had given her the task and he was the one standing in her way now. June Linyuan, damn you. In the Crown Prince's residence outside the royal palace. Achoo! The Crown Prince sneezed. He rubbed his nose. Was someone talking about him? What time is it now? The Crown Prince was reclining on a soft couch and casually feeding the fish in the pond. It's 6:45, replied Feng immediately. Rubbing his nose, June Linyuan looked up at the bird soaring in the blue sky and he gloated. That girl wouldn't be able to run any faster after what he did to her. Let's see how fast you'll run to me this time, the Crown Prince thought proudly. Just then, whoosh! Chong San rushed in like a gust of wind and dropped to his knees in front of June Linyuan. With a long face, he said, Your Royal Highness. June Linyuan frowned. Yes. Your Royal Highness, I'm guilty of a crime which even my death cannot atone for. Speak. June Linyuan was displeased by the interruption. Your Royal Highness, I delivered the message to Mr. Liu of Imperial College as you instructed. But I didn't know that Miss Wu was in the study at the moment, and she heard everything. Your Royal Highness, I'm guilty. Chang San was almost frightened to death. According to Feng, His Royal Highness was in love with Miss Wu, and Miss Wu wasn't to know about that message at all. But he was so dead. Chang San felt a chilly sensation on his neck, as if he was going to lose his head at any moment. However, the Crown Prince only looked down at him with his cold, brooding eyes. What are you guilty of? Ha! Chang San was dumbfounded. Didn't His Royal Highness like Miss Wu? June Linyuan smirked. Don't tell me you think I like that stupid girl. What? Chang San was even more baffled. Didn't His Royal Highness like her? Exasperated, June Linyuan smacked the table. Chapter 531, June Linyuan, you. I think she's a silly girl, and I teased her a bit. That's all. Do you seriously think I'm in love with her? Have you lost your mind? Chang San was completely at a loss. Feng Wu charged into the Crown Prince's residence in a fury. Had this been some other day, Feng Wu would have been stopped at the gate. However, after Granny Gong's reorganization, everyone in the residence realized Feng Wu's importance now. Even those who hadn't met Feng Wu in person made sure that they studied her portrait until they could remember her face, fearing that they might accidentally offend her and die a miserable death. Hence, when Feng Wu arrived outside the front gate of the residence, she thought that they were going to give her a hard time. As a matter of fact, she was prepared for it. However, the guard almost jumped to his feet as soon as he spotted Feng Wu. Miss Wu! Miss Wu is here! Quickly! You people, move! Go tell Mr. Feng and Granny Gong and everyone in the residence. Red alert! The news seemed to take flight and traveled to all corners of the residence in no time. At that moment, Granny Gong was working in the residence with dozens of maids and she was telling them off. It was rather intense and no one dared go near them. Those getting excoriated were the same ones that used to work under Granny Yu. The guard rushed into the courtyard at that moment and whispered something to Granny Gong's maid. The young maid was called Xiangcao and her eyes lit up as soon as she heard the news. She decided that it couldn't be delayed further, so she quickly went up to Granny Gong and whispered into her ear. Miss Wu is here. Granny Gong, who had looked so stern only seconds ago, smiled wholeheartedly. She forgot about those maids right away and hurried off. Where is Miss Wu? Have you welcomed her in? Is tea ready? What about the clean towel for her to clean her hands? Anne. Granny Gong ran so fast that Xiangcao had a hard time catching up with her. Outside, Feng Wu stood there, bewildered, as the guard disappeared into the house. Did she have that terrifying a face? Feng Wu had yet to figure out what was going on when Granny Gong rushed out. Oh my, Miss Wu, it's you. Come in, come in. You're such a rare guest. We're so glad to see you here. Here's a warm towel for you to clean your hands. And please have some fragrant pine tea. Granny Gong couldn't be any more enthusiastic and hospitable. As the saying went, don't slap a smiling face. After seeing Granny Gong's benevolent countenance and enjoying her considerate hospitality, Feng Wu was greatly appeased. Where's June Linyuan? Feng Wu took a deep breath. Granny Gong was great at reading faces. One look at Feng Wu's face and she knew that Miss Wu was mad. Moreover, it had to be something to do with His Royal Highness. Recalling how proud His Royal Highness was and how unbending Miss Wu could be, Granny Gong felt at her wits' end. Granny Gong said, His Royal Highness is by the pond. How about? I can get there myself. Feng Wu then headed straight for the pond, while Granny Gong followed her closely. Meanwhile, the Crown Prince was telling Chang San off. I think she's a silly girl, and I teased her a bit. That's all. Do you seriously think I'm in love with her? Have you lost your mind? Feng rubbed his forehead and looked up at the sky. Chang San looked from Jun Linyuan to Feng. Which one was he supposed to listen to now? Jun Linyuan, you're the one who lost his mind. Feng Wu walked out from behind a tree and glared at Jun Linyuan.